Recreation Board. Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner Abeni.
Present.
Commissioner Musich.
Present.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Present.
Commissioner Elper.
Present.
Commissioner Thompson.
Present.
Commissioner Mentz.
Present.
Commissioner Olson.
Present.
Vice President Smith.
Present.
President Forney.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda unless there is somebody who would like to pull any items for discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Second? Did we get a second there?
Yeah, second.
Thank you. All right. So we need an approval then of the minutes for Monday, January 3rd, 2022, and Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Stop.
Wait a
President
second.
Forney.
Approval of the agenda, I need to also. I'm sorry. I first of all should say to the public and everything, this is, we are meeting in person. Hurrah, hurrah. We're very excited to be here and not used to doing everything quite this way. So anyway, as far as approval of the agenda, all those in favor of the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That's so moved. Okay, so back to then the approval of the minutes. All those in favor of the minutes, both minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that is moved also. We have reports of officer, please. Superintendent Mangora, take it away.
Thank you, President Forney, and it's great to see everybody here today. It really is. So, Commissioners, obviously, thank you for your time. I'll be shifting the frequency of my superintendent highlights to every other meeting. So for today, I'll provide a few brief highlights tonight, as well as briefly share some specific updates that I think are important. And of course, there'll be more to come at the next meeting. So there won't be the usual PowerPoints or photos at this time, but I'm going to give a brief update on some important discussions. The first thing I'd like to do is to just to recognize that my thoughts today are with the family and friends of 15-year-old Deshaun Hill Jr. I recognize that many MPRB staff are grieving today over the tragic loss of Deshaun, who lost his life last Thursday. Many employees had a direct connection to Deshaun, and they knew Deshaun, and he was a former Teamworks employee. He worked at many of our our sites in Northside, parks including, of course, Creekview, Farview, Falwell, and North Commons, just to name a few. Deshaun played basketball and football at Creekview and Farview, and he was also a regular participant within Youth Line at Falwell. And he participated in a variety of park programs at other park sites such as Farview and North Commons. I did not know Deshaun personally, but speaking to the community, a lot of the people that are staff that knew and worked directly with Deshaun say he was a great young man. Deshaun has been described as a all-around athlete, a fantastic all-star athlete, and a anybody knows me, I'm always emotional. So I apologize. Sorry, too many kids lost. But he was on the honor roll, which is what we look for our kids to be. So, senseless loss of another youth in Minneapolis. So, apologize. I just appreciate the connections being made among staff who knew Deshaun, and we plan to send flowers from MPRB and Works. Sorry. difficult day, a difficult week, so I do apologize. And unfortunately, we had another loss of a street reach staff, Joe Brown. I have really sad news to mention that Joe Brown, our summer street reach staff, passed away in his sleep last night. Joe Brown wasn't just the athletic director at N. Middle School. He was a father, a caregiver, an educator. He was a coach. He was a mentor to all of our youth. That was in his presence. I've seen him around everywhere. He worked for the park board for 8 years with us in street reach, and he touched many lives within his work. He brought a lot of joy and laughter and leadership, and he connected a lot of young people to resources in his work that he provided in those 8 years. He was a true pillar of our community, and as well as an incredible leader. He's going to be truly missed, and our condolences go out to Joe and his family and his friends. Thank you for letting me get through that. That was difficult. So a few more things. Spring is in the air, or at least hopefully will be here soon, which means it's time to start the hiring process for seasonal employees for Minneapolis, for a Park and Recreation Board. So I'm asking, of course, all of you to help share the job site with folks you think would be a great fit for MPRB, and you can reach that at www.minneapolisparks.org. There's a few updates I wanted to give that I was asked to give specifically around the hiring of the Creation Space or Spark Studio positions. The Youth Technology Manager finalists have been identified. The hiring decisions will be made the week of February 21st. The Youth Technology Specialist, which is, of course, as we start looking at our sites, we're going to have 6 Spark Studios throughout our park system, which is very exciting. The job descriptions have been completed. The job postings to occur either week of February 28th or March 7th. The hiring for the Assistant Superintendent of Recreation and the Director of Violence Prevention updates. The search firm RFPs were submitted. The search firm has been selected for those positions. The relevant information is being sent to the search firm. In particular, a lot of the information around not only the job description, but really the robust understanding of what these positions are, and we are working through all of that information to get the best hire that we can for these positions. They're critically important, and we are working towards that now. It has taken a little bit of time, but I would like to say, in particular, Assistant Superintendent of Recreation Interim, Mimi Kelb, who is here somewhere. There's Mimi. Mimi has done a phenomenal job in the time that we have been taking our time to find the best candidates and the wonderful people that can do the work for us. But Mimi has been outstanding in her work. She has taken the vision. She has worked directly with me, and she has really stepped up and has been absolutely phenomenal. And if you've had a chance to meet with Mimi, she has really been moving the Recreation Department with excellence, and I'm very proud of that. And so we're in great hands, and soon we will have a new Assistant Superintendent of Recreation and the Community Connections and Violence Prevention, and the manager for the Spark Studios are all coming, so we're very excited about that. We're going to do a scheduled focus group. The recruiter will meet with the peers and subordinates for each position to gather input. And this, of course, will be the time, Commissioners, to meet with that the recruiter will meet with the board. And if commissioners are interested, that those would be a great time to have that conversation with the recruiter on particularly what your thoughts are and what you would see the new positions to be, and that would be your opportunity, of course. The meetings to start as early as the week of February 21st. So the national search will be launched in mid-March, and we will move quickly then, hopefully at that time, to get someone on board here very soon. One last thing I wanted to mention was the preparation for possible Minneapolis Public School strike. As we all know, that is potentially looming here. So I have been working with the Minneapolis Public Schools Superintendent Graff to understand any support we can receive from MPS and also support, of course, our children, our youth within the city. Food or other resources, an example. We anticipate that the strike would probably occur maybe within 2 or 3 weeks, if it occurs, and that we figure would be the process, about 2 to 3 weeks. But again, no guarantee, we don't know that, but typically that's the process. When we look at Rec Plus, our Rec Plus program, we're looking to what we can do to assist with childcare needs for our current clients. Decisions and plans will be made after determining our capacity for Rec Plus. And then, of course, based on our capacity, we're hoping to be able to open some sites for all-day options and current Rec Plus clients. So we are working towards that, and we'll give more information around that. Our recreation centers, as you know, commissioners, are open, and so we open on the 14th. And so we're currently reviewing staff and resources to see if we can offer structured program at specific sites in each service area. So based on those programs currently going on, we will choose sites that have the capacity to accommodate specific programs. Staff from multiple departments will discuss and put together any potential impacts and resources needed to support that initiative. Again, I just want to emphasize that when these occur, we do work very closely with our partners at MPS and with all of our collaborative partners across the city, and we'll be responding with them, and we will keep you updated, of course, to the work that we're going to be doing and how we can respond to all of our youth in the city if this does go forward, if the strike does go forward. A few more things. We're pulling together a team of recreation and environmental stewardship to develop a service response for the community. So we're pulling our team together to respond and to make sure that we have the best plan and strategy going forward. We're measuring the costs and COVID measures. We're working with partners at the school. And as I said earlier today, just a moment ago, that we have opened our buildings for drop-in during specific hours. So with that, I know it's a brief update. If you have any questions, of course, I'm here and staff are here to answer it. And thank you for your time. And I know I struggled at the very beginning, so thank you.
Thank you, first of all, for the kind words in moments of tragedy. Thank you, Superintendent, for sharing. All right, any commissioners have any questions of the superintendent and his report? I'm not seeing any lights. Okay, well. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Menz.
It's actually, it's actually more of a comment. I really appreciate the superintendent's office responding to the possible need in the community for families to not experience any more tragedy or crisis. Our students have been through a lot, and I'm really appreciative that the park board is examining capacity to step up and make sure that we're providing options for families and young people, that we don't want to be, we want to look at our capacity and do what we can and try to even do a little bit more if we can. That it is critical for our students to not experience more crisis in their education or their care. I think that I see that every day, that kids want to be in buildings, they want to be with other kids, and it could be a challenge, and I really appreciate the superintendent taking the lead on that and making sure that we're examining that in a timely fashion.
Thank you. Not seeing anything else, I will move on then to the consent agenda and to move Resolution 2022-124 through Resolution 2022-132. Will somebody
A
move that?
point of information. Is there going to be a section 2 for outside committee updates before, or?
Oh, I did jump right over that, sorry. Once again, it's a habit we weren't in before. So yes, I really appreciate it. Commissioners, any reports from your outside committees and commissions and committees that you have been assigned to? And I see a light on. Thank you so much, Commissioner Benny.
Thank you. I just wanted to report that I'm assigned to an outside committee. It's the City Audit Committee, and I attended a meeting of the City Audit Committee on February 7th. There are 6 meetings planned for this year, and the membership includes 3 council members, 2 appointees, city appointees, and a park board commissioner. The audit committee exists as an independent unit, and I thought that was really interesting, and it's charged with oversight of the city's internal audit function. This does not replace financial audit oversight provided by the state. During the meeting, we adopted a 2022 audit plan with 11 projects, and 4 of those projects involve the park board. The first is the Park Police body-worn camera and license plate reader audit. This is a statutorily required periodic audit. The second is called organizational culture risk assessment, and it will look at employee retention and workplace culture. The city's doing it, and we're on the list to have that done as well. And then finally, there are 2 projects related to IT policy and governance. The next meeting's in April. So,
Wonderful. Any other outside? Yes, Commissioner Thompson.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, President Forney. I am on the Minneapolis Parks Foundation. I'm the parks representative, and we had a board meeting last night. And I'm just mentioning this here because of the first of our consent businesses, of course, surrounding North Commons. And there are still a lot of questions surrounding that project, and that going forward, there may be more questions that I hope that this body can find a way to answer for all involved, although there's robust excitement around it, I will say as well. So that's all I have to report on that.
Wonderful, thank you. Vice President Smith.
All right. So I'm sitting on the Youth Coordinating Board, and we had our first meeting today. And one of the things that is a very point of interest for us is that there's conversation around bringing the Youth Are Here bus back, in particular, in light of what just happened to Deshaun Hill over at North High and the concerns from the community around safety of young people just walking about in community. And so that is a big deal because that will have a dramatic impact on our parks, and it opens up accessibility for young people to feel safe and be engaged in places where adults and other professionals care about them. And so we have not arrived at a decision, but it's certainly something that should be on our radar as a board and for our staff.
Awesome. Well, I've got a couple reports in myself. Commissioner Schaefer and Commissioner Thompson and myself were in the entrance audit meeting that's done by the state. I just wanted to acknowledge. We will then have an exit presentation, and that will probably happen during the summertime. So just wanted you to be aware of that. And I am going to be meeting with the chairs, presidents of the various governmental jurisdictions, and this week. And I hope that I'll share what Vice President Smith shared, that, what is our commonality and things that we can all be working on together. So I'm excited about that. And then I did want to mention, I was going to do it in P's and C's, but I'll mention it now, that the Parks Foundation have made their final payment to us about the construction of Waterworks. And I'm just, hoorah, thank you for the fine partner we do have, in them. So, and then also I will mention, I'll mention that later. Anyway, thank you all. We will then now finally move to the consent agenda, which I think I indicated is going to be from Resolution 2022 to 124 to Resolution, 2022-132. Can I get a?
So moved.
Okay, in a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That passes, carries. Thank you so much. Okay, we then are on to our standing committees, and we have the Legislative and Intergovernmental Committee. I believe Co-Chair Olson, if you'd like to move those.
Yeah, I would like to move Resolution 2021-33-7, resolution approving the draft 2022 draft state legislative agenda of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board.
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 And, excuse me, any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, that one moves as well. Okay, on to the next resolution then, please.
Sorry. I thought we were going to have discussion on that. I
Oh,
would
my
like to-
apologies. I did run that through entirely too fast. I'm so sorry. Okay, so we will hesitate on that and go back to discussion, please.
Yeah, so I would like to move a couple different things. First, to separate the finance and the policy portions of this, to move the policy portion towards, to move to consider it during the legislative and intergovernmental committee meeting today, and then also move to amend the financial side to include frontline worker premium pay. The state legislature will be distributing direct financial support for frontline workers from the American Rescue Plan Act dollars. Premium pay is designed to compensate workers that, by virtue of their employment, were forced to take on additional burdens and make great personal sacrifices as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. MPRB employs workers who interfaced with the public daily during the pandemic. We will seek to have some of those dollars directed at compensation for such employees. So that is what I move.
Is there then a second on the amendment?
Second.
Thank you. So, any discussion? It looks like Commissioner Musich, you would like to comment.
Thank you, President Forney. I would like to clarify what the motion entails. So for what we have in front of us today on the agenda, everything stays the same except for the policy pieces, which we're pulling out and discussing in committee. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, there were a number of amendments that were proposed to that, and to give them their due consideration, we decided it would be best to discuss them in committee first.
With the exception of?
With the exception of the frontline worker premium pay, as we wanted to pass the financial aspect because we felt it was important that we get started on that legislative process, whereas the policy has a little more leeway.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for that clarification. So I didn't see the piece about the worker pay in our packet. Is that here, or do we need to suspend the rules to, no, we don't need to suspend the rules, okay. I'm good then. I think I understand what's going on. I appreciate the clarification and the head nods from the secretary on my question that doesn't need answering. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Thompson?
Yes, I also have a clarifying question, point of order, I suppose.
Please.
The frontline worker pay, you're wanting to put that into admin finance?
No.
No,
No.
okay, just to legislative. Okay, I heard some words that got me confused. Thank you.
Yeah, so the state legislative plan is broken up into a financial section and a policy section. So we are seeing as the frontline worker premium pay relates to financial aspects.
Perfect.
Consider that.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
So this is to the amendment of changing out the legislative agenda, dividing it, okay, sending part of it to the committee, if everybody's understanding. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and abstentions. All right. Looks like that moves. So thank you so much. Now then to the main motion, and if everybody is fine with Resolution 2021-337 as amended, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That passes. On to the next resolution. Yep, you again. That's okay.
Yep. I would like to move Resolution 2021-338, or 338, I don't know the syntax quite right there. A resolution adopting the 2022 federal legislative agenda of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. Any discussion on that item? Okay, seeing no lights, all those in favor of Resolution 2021-338? Oh, wait a second. Secretary Ringel?
My apology, President Forney, and maybe Council Rice will need to help with this. You do have a revised version of the legislative agenda that included clarifications on language as things move through the federal legislative process. So I think you actually have to approve the revised version versus the original version that came out of committee. And I don't know if that would require an amendment or just a specification that it's the revised versus the original.
Thank you.
Madam President, I think if the motion is just references the revised version, that would be sufficient.
Okay, Co-Chair Olson, would you like to indicate the revised version?
Yeah, I would like to move said resolution, the revised version.
Wonderful, okay. So that's moved and seconded. All those in favor of the revised then, resolution, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That moves. Okay, on to Administration and Finance Committee. I believe we have Co-Chair Thompson. You'd like to
Yes.
read the resolution.
Thank you, President Forney. On behalf of the Administration and Finance Committee, I would like to move Resolution 2022-121, resolution accepting the conveyance of Market Square from Hennepin County Housing and Redevelopment Authority according to the terms of the Parkland Dedication and Operating Agreement for the Lake and Hiawatha Development Project, and approving an assignment of rights in the lease agreement between the Hennepin County Housing and Redevelopment Authority and the Metropolitan Council.
Wonderful.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second?
Thank you. Any discussion on that item? Seeing no lights. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, we have one abstention. All right, that motion does carry. All right, on to our Planning Committee, Co-Chair Abene.
Yes, on behalf of the Planning Committee, I'd like to move Resolution 2022-122, resolution amending the Loring Park portion of the Downtown Service Area Master Plan, the Nokomis-Hiawatha Regional Park Master Plan, and the Minnehaha Parkway Regional Trail Master Plan to allow for the implementation of pickleball courts.
So moved.
A second? Second. Thank you so much. Any discussion on that item? Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That motion also carries. Okay, we're getting in right before 5:30. Okay, on to our final resolution then.
Yes, the next resolution from the Planning Committee is Resolution 2022-123. This is a resolution approving temporary occupancy under Section 4F of the Transportation Act of 1966 for a City of Minneapolis project to improve pedestrian signals and ramps at multiple locations impacting parkland at Minneapolis Chain of Lakes Regional Park, Minnehaha Regional Minnehaha Parkway Regional Trail, and Nokomis-Hiawatha Regional Park.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that item? I thought there would be. Yes, Commissioner Alper, excuse me.
Thank you so much, President Forney. I would like to make an amendment to that resolution. And let's see, it should be in, it went out already, but I could read the new clauses.
Please
So
do.
at the very top, it would add to the piece that co-chair, my planning committee co-chair Benny just read, it would add the words, and urging the expedient implementation of the West Lake Multimodal Transportation Study. It would also add a whereas clause, whereas in February of 2016, the City of Minneapolis, MPRB, Hennepin County, and the Metropolitan Council released the West Lake Multimodal Transportation Study, which references specific improvements at Lake Street and Dean Parkway and Lake Street and Thomas Avenue intersections, including various pedestrian enhancements, Recommendation B, signal timing improvements. Recommendation 16, enhanced crossings. Recommendation 17, and lane reduction and trail expansion on the south side of Lake Street east of Thomas Avenue. Recommendations 20 and 33. And it would also add two resolved clauses. Resolved that the Board of Commissioners directs MPRB staff to strongly advocate for leading pedestrian interval signalization and other enhanced pedestrian safety elements during ongoing project review. Resolved that the Board of Commissioners urges the City of Minneapolis and its partners to continue to expediently implement the recommendations of the West Lake Multimodal Transportation Study with specific attention to lane width reductions, widened medians, and conversion of an eastbound vehicle lane on Lake Street east of Thomas Avenue to a protected multi-use trail.
Somebody like to second that?
Second.
Thank you. Okay. Any discussion on the item?
I'm happy to speak to this amendment. So I've worked with planning staff, and I believe that the text we have here is feasible to implement in terms of the direction for staff to advocate for pedestrian safety mechanisms and strategies at these locations that come into play with this resolution. Also, it recognizes that we're not the leading partners, but we're one of the partners working with the city, with Hennepin County, and other jurisdictions, and that we've worked on. That we were a partner on this Westlake multimodal transportation study. So it would really pursue that policy direction, and I think that clarifies for me a lot of the language and our involvement with the park board. So I hope you can support it, commissioners.
Okay. We have one person for speaking for open time, but I will allow that if Coach Talley will allow us to just finish off our business here. Okay. I guess we're going to go to open time. So I'm going to open it up for open time. I apologize. And so this is our time to listen to the community. We do not, respond to it and everything. And I also should clarify to people that we have been meeting virtually for an awful long time. And during that time, we did adjust things, and we allowed call-ins. We also had mail-ins that are emailed that were read and everything. We are back now in person and everything, and so we are only doing in person. So I'm very pleased that we do have somebody to speak tonight and everything. We allow 15 minutes. Or open time, but I'm gonna limit you, Coach Taylor, to just 3 minutes. Sorry. Anyway, but as you know, we don't allow any harassing or discriminatory language and everything. So please, say your piece, and if you would. We'd appreciate if you would keep your mask on. Yes, I know it's always difficult.
Speak loud enough with understanding.
If you can state your name and your address for the record, we'd appreciate it, but go forth.
Well, I'm going to call Coach Mike Talley. I live in North Minneapolis. I volunteer coach around these parts for about 43 years. Madam Chair, thank you for allowing me to speak, and to other commissioners, I respect you all. I want to give a thanks, first of all, to the old board that started this process, to allow you, board, to accept this great unanimous decision. I'm sorry I wasn't here to hear that, but I was in my car taking care of the other stuff that I do in my life. And I'm so happy that we're on a plan to do some meaningful changes in North Minneapolis. Whether we get there or not, I don't know. But we just allocated $881,000 to somebody to start the plan, right? And I'm excited about that. I want to thank my partner in crime, Brett Buckner, who, again, kind of goes on the backside and I do the front side of the speaking, the Seeds to Harvest. The many community members who sat in the CACs when this started 9 years ago. Can you believe it? 9 years ago. I think we're going on 10 now. I don't know. It's getting close. I don't want to keep track anymore. I'm just glad that we're seeing a way for North Minneapolis to heal. I hope the politicians at the governor's office and city of Minneapolis can see themselves in this place, a space for Northsiders and city of Minneapolis-siders to see themselves in this wonderful building that is theirs now. As you've seen in the story, we don't have to leave anymore to play, to have high school games, to have regular Saturday basketball where all the families come to one site and enjoy themselves and play with each other. So again, I just want to say thank you very much, this new board. You don't know how much I appreciate listening to you folks at home when I'm on my couch on Wednesdays, every third Wednesday, as I've been doing for 9 years, because that's how much I'm connected to the parks. I got nothing else to do. It ain't funny, but it's true. My wife says, what are you doing? You listening again? Yes, I am. You know that. But again, thank you very much. We still got some balls to push up the hills, but with everyone's support here, with your extending arms to folks, I think we can get it done and get the first phase done, and then we'll move to the second phase. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak, and I will continue to make us proud as a community in my volunteerism and make you folks proud too. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Coach Talley, yahoo, okay. So I am going to then close the open time and go back to Commissioner Aveni.
Thank you so much, President Forney. I just wanted to comment about the resolutions that were submitted by Commissioner Alper. I just want to say that in the parks and the city and other public landowners in Minneapolis, there's a lot of talk about prioritizing pedestrians, and instead we don't really get there very often. And I think, I really appreciate some of the content here in these resolutions, particularly the pedestrian interval signalization, and asking us to kind of push on that. It's a much safer way for people to cross large multiple lanes, and there are examples that the county's already done that in Dinkytown and other places on their county roads, and so I think this is about prioritizing pedestrians and the pedestrian experience and the pedestrian realm, and I think that all of us are pedestrians from time to time, and I think that it's something that I would like to support and emphasize with this work, so thank you.
Commissioner Mintz.
I agree that focusing on pedestrians is extremely important, and we are in a unique position to sort of advocate for that. What I'm wondering is, what teeth does this resolution have in regards to ensuring that those things happen? So how government works and how this stuff plays out, what is the likelihood that the city will have, since we are not the lead project, how does the resolutions and the amendments to resolutions ensure that we will be prioritizing those pedestrians and those modifications will be put into place, if there is any?
Director Arvidsson, I think, is here to address that for us.
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, I'll try to do my best and be as honest as I can. So the action before you is really about an allowance for someone else's project to temporarily occupy parkland. We are at the table to consult with the city around the final designs of these intersection improvements. The city doesn't technically have to listen to us during those consultations. The project could go forward as kind of currently conceptualized. I think that the city will listen to us. I think that we have a good enough relationship, and I think there's enough interest at the city to also do some of these improvements that we'll be able to consult with them at the table and make that happen. But I do have to be honest and say that if the temporary occupancy is approved, then even if there are not things like widened medians and leading pedestrian intervals, the board would still have authorized this project to go forward. I believe that there are still some improvements. They may not go as far as everyone would like if we lose some of those things, but there still would be some pedestrian improvements included. I don't know if that answers your question fully, but that's kind of where the jurisdictional framework is for this particular item.
Thank you. Commissioner Schaefer.
I think you had a question, I had asked a question earlier that you would be willing to keep us informed as that progress went along, particularly along the medians and the signals. So I would just encourage you to keep that in mind because we are interested and would love to hear more when you know more.
Yes, President Forney, Commissioner Schaefer, we can certainly keep the board apprised of the final design decisions as they're being made. We did just receive a 60% plan set, which staff is reviewing, so there are several other steps before we get to a final design, and we can keep you apprised of the the conversations.
Yep. Thank you. No other lights? I too, just thank you for, the work that you, both co-chairs, did collaboratively and also with staff. I really appreciated keeping your eyes and ears out for, specifically our pedestrians. So greatly appreciated. So to the amendment, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Oops, sorry. Okay, anyway. Sorry about that interruption. Anyway, all those opposed, signify by saying nay. Okay, abstentions? Okay, that motion does move, and sorry, I did get a text, these little ingenious ways, so we do have an open time speaker as well, anyway, who wasn't on the list. So Peggy Fuller, is she here? Oh, Peggy, thank you. If you want to approach us, I'm going to open up the open time. I did not see this. Please come address us, if you will, your name and your address, if you're comfortable, for the record.
Yes. Welcome back, everybody, and all the new people. This is really cool. It's exciting to see you in person. So thank you for sneaking me in. I'm sorry it kind of fell out of the flow. I'm not sure what happened, but Penny Fuller at 4106 Burton Lane here in Minneapolis. And I just kind of wrote things down, so hopefully I'm a little more on task here. I came to speak about Lake Hiawatha, and it's a place that I care deeply about. I've invested countless hours removing trash and also working at restoring native plantings at her side. She is a jewel. There's a lot of biodiversity there. Those of you who've spent time have a sense of that, I hope. But she's really, really threatened. And anybody who's even casually gone around there sees some of that. We've had major outbreaks of nasty stuff in the water again this year. But the obvious things are trash, a ton of trash. And I think probably everybody's familiar with this, but I came tonight just to urge people to bring forward the Lake Hiawatha Master Plan again. Because we really need resolution. And pollution doesn't stop. And we see a lot of diversity in the wildlife there. We've even seen some animals documented that are threatened species, which is super cool. But we want to help support them and keep them thriving and not harm them. And so trash is our primary concern, and also the pollution that we're seeing a lot. There's documentation of phosphorus, and so the lake is really badly impaired with phosphorus. 400 pounds is what the number is that I was given. And both the city and park board are responsible for figuring out a solution, which was identified in that park plan put forward last year. One of the things that contributes to the phosphorus load is the pumping off the golf course. And so that's an ongoing issue as well. I'll keep it short, I guess, for now. But I just wanted to put that plug in once again and keep reminding people. There's so many important things going on right now, and you guys have super important work. And again, I do want to say thank you for your time and your commitment and the energy you bring to this, all of you. Thank you. All right, good night.
So we are going to move on to one.
You do have 2022,
Did I miss one?
123 is moved and seconded, but you haven't taken the final.
Oh, I didn't take the final. I thank you. The little text interrupted me substantially here. Okay, so the amendment has been moved. Now we move to the main motion on Resolution 2022-123 as amended. All those in favor, not flavor, anyway, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? That motion carries. Okay, we are now on to our one discussion item, and that is the 2022 bonding projects and climate resiliency presented by our Director of Strategic Planning, Arvidsson. Take it away. Excuse me?
Thank you, President Forney. Just a moment, I'm getting a password
Oh,
prompt,
that's fine. Okay, we got some logistics we have to deal with.
and I'm not sure
So,
what to do.
Is there anyone in
I'd like
the
to use my
media-
lifeline to IT.
I was going to say, is there anyone in the back room that can
there a
log into
media-
this computer?
There a
Tim,
media card
we need
password?
you.
Awesome.
Oh, here it is, here it is.
Yep, there you got it.
All right.
I am out of practice from doing this part.
In person?
Secretary Ringgold has
I
been
know,
running
she
the
did
presentations
everything.
for so long.
I will take a moment to say, I cannot thank staff enough for all that you have done to make our virtual meetings possible. And she's not listening, but, you know, Secretary and Deputy Superintendent Ringgold has just carried so much of the load of virtual meetings. I'm just saying, thank you, all of you, for making it happen. Thank you, Tim, there out and John Goodrich. Really appreciate it. Go right ahead.
Yes, President Forney, Commissioners, I think we're ready. I was asked to talk a little bit about our bonding projects, state bonding projects this year in the context of climate resiliency. I think, as we understand it, this may be the first of some periodic presentations about what the Park Board is doing around climate resiliency. So because of the timing of the legislative session right now, and the governor has obviously released his bonding program, and those conversations are beginning to be had, we thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about our bonding projects. So just for context, so everybody's aware of what we have in, the board previously authorized the submittal of 4 different bonding projects, and they are here in front of you in priority order. North Commons, the Part 2 funding for the initial implementation at North Commons, the Grand Rounds Missing Link, the Riverside phase of Waterworks, and then a project appropriately called Green Infrastructure and Climate Resiliency in Minneapolis Creeks. So I'm going to go through these 4, not necessarily in this order, because I'm going to start with the one that actually has climate resiliency in its title and talk a little bit about that. So this Green Infrastructure and Climate Resiliency project actually grew initially out of a bond request that came from a budget goal that Commissioner Musich was instrumental in bringing forward into the 2021 budget. So on the result of that, the language there said that we needed to identify at least one project that was specifically going to look at resiliency in our park system. And so through some conversation internally and with commissioners, that project became focused on the different creeks. So I think I probably don't have to tell this group, you all understand that climate projections are suggesting more significant rainfall events over time, along with more of our precipitation falling as rain rather than snow. And last year's dry year was actually anomalous in the last 6 or 7. We had a stretch of 6 years with 7 years worth of rain within them. And you can see that particularly along our creeks where we've had some infrastructure issues. It's important to remember also that pretty much all the rain that falls in Minneapolis ends up in our parks, and much of the rain that falls to the west of us also ends up flowing through our parks. That means that the waterside infrastructure that we have, that everybody loves, that we spend a lot of money maintaining, is at risk from these increased flashy flood events. So there are 3 creeks that run through Minneapolis from the west: Shingle, Bassett's, and Minnehaha. And all 3 of those creeks are at a particular threat, especially from regional stormwater. So they are carrying water from our western suburbs, in addition to the city itself, from very, very large watersheds. In fact, Minnehaha Creek encompasses the entirety of Lake Minnetonka and beyond. And then they flow through our city and then into the Mississippi River, and then they flow downstream to the rest of the state. So we felt like this was a good project to bring forward to the state legislature because it is not just a Minneapolis problem. This is a regional and statewide issue, even when we look at just these 3 creeks. We're ahead of the game because we have an amazing community that engaged with us over years to actually create master plans for all 3 of these creeks that have significant climate resiliency goals within them. So we're actually ready to go. The vision is already there. The vision is very climate resilient. And with some help from the state, we could begin implementing things pretty quickly. So specifically, we talked about these 3 creeks. Because of their lengths, the numbers are a little bit different. So this was a $12 million ask, and you can see the breakdowns right there. Some of the work types that might take place would be shoreline and in-stream enhancement, such as remeanders, riffles, and pools, floodplain expansion, so that we can hold more of that water without impacting homes and our own infrastructure. Habitat improvement along with that, an expanded floodplain often leads to better habitat environments for even threatened species. Stormwater pretreatment for water that's flowing into these creeks from our city infrastructure. Trail and bridge relocations and upgrades, and also modifications to stormwater outfalls and flumes. So obviously we'll need partnerships for some of this, but it's good for us to be trying to bring some seed money to the table. And I think those partnerships specifically are about the city of Minneapolis and at least 3 watersheds. And I say at least 3 because the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization could also be a party to the table, but they don't actually oversee the 3 creeks themselves. So here on a map, again, you're probably familiar, but I'm used to doing this for legislators who maybe don't know our city that well. But here on the map, you have Minnehaha Creek in the furthest south that runs all the way across the city. Bassett's Creek is the middle one, and Shingle in the top. And actually, Shingle Creek has an interesting history because it used to be really more of just kind of a wet spot in the landscape, and it was actually ditched in order to speed water flow out of North Minneapolis so that it could be developed for residential uses. So Shingle Creek has a very deep trench with steep sides, and so it very much is a flume with limited habitat quality, and it can be very flashy at times. So here's a couple of problems that we face. We get flood erosion in our parks. You can see most notably the one on the right-hand side where that bank has collapsed. If you go out there today, it's actually even another 6 feet further in. So that is a continuing to erode. We've got these riprap and concrete pipe walls in Minnehaha Creek in places that have become exposed, and the water is starting to eddy behind them, which is an even more egregious issue than if they weren't there in the first place. In addition, we have failing infrastructure. So the bridge on the top there is at Shingle Creek. You can see water has been up over this trail and has damaged it, damaged the pavement, makes it a pretty difficult ride. And the lower left is a bridge that we are in the midst of needing to replace right now because it is nearly structurally deficient. If you go out there, it is actually tipped, and its footings have been impacted by higher floodwaters. And in addition, we have untreated stormwater. This particular spot is at Lyndhurst Park, and this is the tributary from Lake Harriet. It actually goes right under one of our playgrounds, but it's also taking stormwater directly from the city surface and putting that into the water bodies without any pretreatment. So the solutions are in our master plans. Here's a vision from the Minnehaha Creek Master Plan. Bassett's and Shingle have similar, though maybe not as detailed visions. But this is a section that shows how we can preserve parkway and trail and bridge infrastructure, while also widening out that floodplain into a broader habitat area that is more flood resilient, provides better treatment options for water quality, manages water quantity by holding back some of that water. The Minnehaha Creek Master Plan, if all the BMPs were implemented, we'd remove about 400 pounds of phosphorus from the creek, and we would lengthen the creek length an additional mile on top of its existing 7 miles because of remeanders. And when you lengthen a creek, you flatten its trajectory, and it allows that water to move more slowly, which is often better for habitat, better for water storage, and better for water quality. And here's a zoomed-in vision of one location underneath the Nicollet Bridge, where we've shown significant remeanders of the creek in the light blue. You can see the existing creek corridor there, and then meanders in the light blue, as well as wetlands that can serve as floodplain expansion. So a natural creek that can actually flood up and then over into a floodplain, it's really good for habitat, really good for hydrology. It puts more of that water into the groundwater. So these are some of the things that we're trying to do here in the Minnehaha Creek Master Plan, and they are similar in Bassett's and Shingle as well. The North Commons Community Center, I will say the other 3 bonding projects aren't as explicitly climate resilient, but I just want to talk about a few things that are possible as we move through them. The North Commons Community Center, for which you approved a consultant contract tonight, which we're very excited about to get moving on that, as is Coach Tate, you heard. We are looking at a transformative vision, and it's a built-up site, and we're talking about a building in a water park. But I think even in the context of that, there's opportunities that we can do, and even opportunities that are directed by some existing planning. So the building itself will have to be compliant with state of Minnesota B3 guidelines. Those aren't really super groundbreaking at this point, but we still will have to meet some basic environmental threshold because we have state funding. Excuse me. In addition, the building in the water park will follow guidance in some of our adopted plans. I just want to highlight the Ecological System Plan, which does call for us to design efficiency into buildings at the time of construction, and also to explore geothermal and solar generation in areas determined suitable for them. So those are things that we can look at as we look at this building. In addition, the Parks for All Comprehensive Plan, see on the wall behind you, excitingly, talks about us reducing greenhouse gas and carbon emissions when we look at buildings, among other things. And then also to increase the amount of energy generated from renewable sources that we use in park buildings and facilities. So in the Ecological System Plan, we did some mapping around alternative energy potential, and North Commons Park is considered a suitable site for geothermal in the soil analysis that we did during that. And not every park is, but North Commons was considered suitable. Not extremely suitable, but suitable. And also North Commons was considered to have good solar potential in a solar analysis that we had done as a part of the Ecological System Plan. So those mapping resources in the Ecological System Plan are showing us that this could be a good place to explore actually some alternative energy generation that would serve the building. And our selected consultant team that you just hired does include professionals that are able to raise these issues and then deliver on them. And as always, if there's a particular expertise that we need that's not exactly there, we can bring that into the team. So I think there's some opportunities at North Commons to do some cool things here. The Grand Rounds Missing Link is a bonding project that its climate resiliency opportunities are maybe a little self-explanatory. It's a big, long trail that connects people through the city. And what's interesting about this segment of the Grand Rounds is that it actually will connect not just through residential areas, but commercial and industrial areas. So it becomes a potential non-motorized pathway for people to get to and from their jobs, living wage jobs, in some of the industrial areas around Broadway. And in addition, in order to implement that in partnership with the city, there are locations where some vehicle lanes may be reduced. And that has actually already been done on Industrial Boulevard, just south of Interstate 35. If you haven't been up there, the city took out a lane and worked with us to build a trail in that reclaimed space. And the last one is Waterworks. And I think Waterworks doesn't explicitly address climate resiliency, other than potentially a more naturalized Mississippi River edge in that location. But a lot of best practices could be incorporated with this, most notably stormwater management in the area. We have Parkway going through there, sustainable materials, and it will provide enhanced bike and ped access, encouraging additional non-motorized uses. So just a refresher slide on what our bond projects are, and I am happy to take whatever questions or discussion items you would like to take. Back to you, President Forney.
Commissioner Mans?
Yep, I have something I'll put the mic on. Thanks, Superintendent Arvidsson. This is terrific. So I noticed, I'm wondering, what are the barriers to getting the grand rounds done versus the barriers to getting something done in the creeks? And why did we prioritize one over the other? And do we think that that's going to damage what we might be able to get in bonding?
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, and I may also defer to lobbyist Rice on this question, but the state, when we submit bonding projects, requires us to prioritize. I have seen throughout the years, I think lobbyist Rice has seen throughout many more years than I have, that the legislature doesn't always respect our priorities. So it really does make a difference kind of what they're interested in. For instance, 2 years ago, North Commons was our 4th ranked bonding project, and that was the one that the governor got really excited about, that the legislature got excited about, and it was the one that got funded. So we had a lengthy discussion last summer with the previous board about the prioritizations and where they should be, and this was just how it was determined. I don't think that having something at number 4 really kind of kills its chances. But the rub is really about getting folks interested in providing funding for this. The barriers to the missing link and the barriers to the green infrastructure projects are simply funding. Like these are big asks, and we don't have the funding to implement either of those projects, except for very piecemeal over a very long period of time. So our hope in putting these projects forward is that we could make kind of a great leap forward. For instance, in the Grand Rounds Missing Link, with this $12.3 million, we could complete everything except for that tricky middle section over the railroad and through the university's northern kind of campus area. We would finish all the way down to Hennepin Avenue, and we'd come up from the river all the way up to the railroad. And that's a significant leap in implementing that trail corridor, which we would pick away at $1 million at a time over many, many years. So,
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Commissioner Thompson? Good,
There,
tricky.
I was like, turn on.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry. I want to just clarify with, obviously, North Commons is a very big project. And when we say Part 2 funding, we have the 5.3 million. Is this still toward Phase 1 building, or is it toward other? I have not seen things that are correlative of like what part's going to cost what. So I'm just curious toward that end, if this is still toward the best, like the sort of field housey thing.
yeah, President Forney, Commissioner Thompson, you're correct that this is for that same project.
Yep.
We call it the Phase 1 implementation. It's the building, the water park, and associated parking and associated demolitions. And that is the only thing that we are working on. We initially asked the state for $11 million 2 years ago. They gave us 5, so now we're asking for the other 6.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Vice President Smith?
Thank you. I just have a quick question. Like, how does this meet our equity priorities in terms of just from a park board perspective?
Sure, President Forney, Commissioner Smith, thank you for that question. So this was a big part of the discussion when the previous board was prioritizing these projects, and North Commons was prioritized as number 1 because it serves an area that sits within one of our ACP 50 areas, or areas of concentrated poverty where more than 50% of people are people of color. That's for the folks at home. I'm sure you all understand what that means. So that was a project that kind of sits right in the area that we really need to make some transformative moves. In addition, the Grand Rounds Missing Link is considered an important equity project because it is in a part of town that has really never been served by the Grand Rounds. There's only 2 portions of town that don't have that Grand Round trail system, and it is kind of northeast, southeast, and then the river right here and just north of us. And we're actively working on both of those areas. And then the green infrastructure and climate resiliency, though we have the most robust planning, most detailed planning perhaps in Minnehaha Creek, we wanted to address all 3 of those, 2 of which do run through, again, North Minneapolis and areas that are adjacent to ACP 50s, because we, the same climate issues are being faced in those parts of town too. And we wanted to make sure to step into those projects as well.
Got it.
Finished? Okay, Commissioner Menz.
Speaking to the green infrastructure part was really interesting to me, that we could do so much work so quickly. What I'm wondering is, in the planning department, or how the governor or the state decides to fund these requests, if they only give us $6 million for that project, are we going to prioritize the creeks in the north part of town, or are we going to prioritize Minnehaha Creek? And what would be the reasoning that would go into that decision-making, or do we even have to worry about that at this point?
Yeah, President Forney, Commissioner Menz, I think that's a good question, because it's not uncommon that we would get a partial number. I don't know exactly how we would proceed in the case of the Creeks project. I think it would be worth having some conversations with commissioners and with staff and with community about how to do that. I mean, the sort of, one way would be to sort of split all the investments in all 3 creeks in half, but I don't know if that's the equitable way, because there are issues at Shingle that, there's much less existing habitat value at Shingle than there is at Minnehaha Creek today. So we might need to overinvest there in order to bring it up to where the creek is. I think it would have to be a longer discussion about how we break that out. And we'd be happy to involve commissioners in that conversation too.
That'd be good, because I do wonder whether or not it's because of disinvestment in Shingle Creek versus investment in Minnehaha Creek over the decades that has happened. I know it's noticeable as I've ridden my bike down those creeks that there is an obvious difference in investment. So just something to consider, and I appreciate your time and really clear explanation of these projects.
Lobbyist, I'm assuming, Lobbyist Rice?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Adam did an excellent job explaining the priorities and how the board has arrived at in the past. Typically what happens is an idea gets generated. As he said, 2 years ago, North Commons was 4th, and it rose to the top for a variety of reasons. So I think I would, as commissioners, I'd look at these as kind of topics of conversation with your legislative delegation, projects that fit into the larger plans of the park board. North Commons was an equity issue. It attracted a lot of attention from then Commissioner France and an interest by the legislature. They saw a good project and advanced it. Grand Rounds kind of started on, generally projects start on the bottom of the list, and they might work themselves up or move around depending on what's important to legislators, I don't want to use the word popular, but things that are important. The Grand Rounds Missing Link was something that Commissioner Meyer, your predecessor, was very interested in and put it on the list and was lower ranked. I wouldn't say ranked, but it got on the list, and absent kind of a real pressing need, it's moved up to 3rd. Waterworks is a long-time commitment. I believe the president talked about how they just finished off the payment of Waterworks Phase 1. This is Waterworks Riverside, which is Phase 2 of that project, which is an ongoing project. And then green infrastructure is new to the agenda this year, and we'll put it out there. It could be, as the legislature looks at it, they may prioritize it. They might write in a rider that says you get X, and of that amount, you have to go here or there. So we try to be, the board sets these priorities, and the legislature reacts. They're the ones that have the funds, and they they might see something that's worthwhile. We can give you a lot of history of other projects like East Phillips Park or Phillips Pool and Gym. They started out small, they got bigger, they rose up, and they got on. I think the key advice I'd say is that if it gets on the list, your lobbying team and the staff and everyone else will say, this is what you told us to do, and we're going to try to find a way to do it. It might take typically doesn't take a year like North Commons. Sometimes it can be 1, 5, 10, or maybe 20, or maybe 50 years. I mean, we have projects that go on that long. I mean, Commissioner Forney's talked about the Above the Falls plan. That's, 30 years in the making.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Vice President Smith.
Adam, this may be a question for you, it may not be, but how are we notifying neighbors in the appropriate affected areas, and how far is that radius that we're notifying people? That's part one. And then, do we have an estimate of the number of visitors that will, frequent these spaces? When I think about North Commons, is it going to be the folks from North Minneapolis to benefit primarily, or are we looking at people that will come in and traverse into the community, and then subsequently the people who live here in these areas of concentrated poverty will be kind of forced out or sort of feel like they're not welcome because of these new amenities and the diversity of people now in their community all of a sudden? That's the first set of questions.
President Forney, Commissioner Smith, yeah, I'll try to answer those in a couple different ways because we're operating sort of two different park systems in one, the neighborhood and the regional, and we have different data for those different systems. So in terms of visitation, I will say that in the neighborhood parks, like North Commons, we don't have solid, scientifically defensible user data. So we don't know how many people are using North Commons. We have a general understanding of that and a general understanding of their demographic makeup, but we don't have hard data on that. With the regional parks, we do. So I don't know the numbers offhand, but I can tell you how many people use Shingle Creek every year. I can tell you that 2.3 million people use Minnehaha Creek each year. We know a little less about their demographic makeups. That data comes from the Metropolitan Council, and we do park counts every summer as required by Met Council to do that. The second line of questioning is about sort of notification and how we engage around these sites. So when we begin a capital project, like we are doing with North Commons now, we prepare a community engagement plan that communicates to the public and to you what we are going to do. And our exact sort of how far around a park we engage can vary significantly depending on the project. So, and it's not just notification within a certain radius. We're typically out at events. We're tagging along on things that are going on in the park, and we may do our own events, but it's a huge mix of different things. During the planning effort for North Commons specifically, the master planning effort, there was a lot of concern that you raise exactly. Like, are we going to build a place that brings in a whole lot of folks that are not Northsiders, and are Northsiders going to be able to get access to the building? So we wrote into that master plan a set of guiding principles that are guiding our implementation and even our operation of that facility after the fact. That's the only neighborhood park that we have written standalone guiding principles for, because it was such a big conversation topic at that time. So those guiding principles were baked into the request for proposals from the consultants. So our consultant team, which was officially hired tonight, does have engagement specialists that are going to help us make sure of that. And then there's guiding principles around kind of how the building is designed to be welcoming for Northsiders, involvement by Northside contractors so that there's ownership of that building. So as much as we can do, that's in there. And then the operations even, the guiding principles call for that to be a community-engaged process to determine how the site is programmed and how access is provided, which is not unlike the process that we went through with Phillips Aquatic Center, where the community got input on kind of what the hours were going to be and who get to access that. So I think there's a good foundation, but foundations, we can always improve the building on top of them. So Commissioner Smith, if you or anybody else want to talk about that in more detail with us, or if you have ideas and suggestions for us in planning, we're always willing to hear that and to learn from your experience too. So I'll just leave it at that and hope that that answers your question, and it sounds like you might have more.
Thank you. You sort of got at it. I'm just wondering if we will provide the community with like, are we doing like media releases or anything around terms of like the bonding money that we're securing and kind of that process to really walk our community through this? One, it gives an opportunity to learn how to advocate, because a lot of times when we think about North Minneapolis, the disparities are so different north and south. And so sometimes it's about a lack of knowing the process. And so any way that we can kind of shepherd our community along to be engaged at a different level, I think we have an opportunity to do so. Does it equate a lot more work? Possibly, but it is absolutely the good neighbor thing to do. And I think that we have an opportunity to really step outside the mode with that part of it. So the question really is, like, are we providing some of this insight, or what information are we providing to the community in terms of like the media release and all of those sorts of things? And that's my final questions.
Sure. President Forney, Commissioner Smith, yes, we do a lot of that basic kind of information about the project. We do media releases, not just through our kind of internal Gov delivery system, but we're often connecting with local radio stations and local newspapers on the north side to get that word out. In addition, what we did during the North Service Area Master Plan, and what we plan to do again, is actually hire the community to engage itself. So we hired community connectors, which were individuals and groups that went out and did engagement on our behalf and brought data back to us. And we're planning on doing that again as we move into the detailed design. And also, I think there's opportunity to have youth be engaging their peers. So Dan Elias, who was here earlier, and I do have a collaboration right now with some teachers at North High who are potentially going to help us, who are going to work with us to do a senior project where their government students in the North Commons High are going to engage their peers rather than me and Dan being in the lunchroom trying to get input. Those students are going to do that. And so hopefully then we're also creating some capacity, or helping create some capacity, so that kids might be exposed to design careers, or can at least get really locked in and integrated into that and kind of drive right into the process and be decision makers one day.
Awesome. Thank you.
No other questions? Thank you, Director Arvson. I just get so excited. No, I got a couple more questions for you. Sorry, sir. Anyway, in regards to the creeks, have we been in touch with any of the watersheds to see whether or not they are not only on board, but possibly even could, should we say, flex their muscles with any financing or, supportive measures in that regard?
President Forney, yes. In terms of kind of lobbying for our state bonding, I don't know if we've been working with them on kind of having that coordinated push, but I do know that there's been ongoing conversations with Minnehaha Creek about moving some of their funding that has typically gone west of the city into Minneapolis. And I think Assistant Superintendent Schroeder could talk more about that if you want to. At Bassett's Creek, we've developed a pretty great relationship with them where our CIPs are actually aligned. And so Bassett's Creek is paying for a pretty massive stormwater management and also habitat enhancement project at Bryn Mawr Meadows that will be under construction this year. So they're paying for that, and we aligned our CIPs in order to make that happen. Bassett's Creek has also put into their CIP some work on some wetland enhancement up in Bassett Creek Park that would coordinate with potential improvements there. At Shingle, that relationship, I think, is just beginning. That's the watershed that we've maybe had the least relationship with over the years. But I did about 3 weeks ago just meet with Shingle and talked about this bond project. They were very excited. And that's the sort of, it's the watershed with the least amount of, I think, funding power, as it were. And we're a very small part of their overall watershed. But I think it's still worth having the conversations, and we are moving in that direction.
And MWMO, have we have any relationship built with them?
President Forney, we haven't so much talked to them a lot about the creeks because their jurisdiction is really more, they've helped us a lot on the waterfront, even in land acquisition, and are stepping to the table with Upper Harbor Terminal And also with some of our Grand Rounds routing through the Tower Side area, they are involved. So we haven't really reached out to them too much about the creek specifically because their jurisdiction is a bit more the river.
Gotcha. Well, very exciting. And thank you, first of all, so much for this presentation. I need to tell the audience and everything that we, all of us up here at the dais and everything, are looking at a wonderful, wonderful mural, shall I say, on our back wall here, which is the mission that was just adopted last year from our Parks for All comprehensive, whatever it was called. Anyway, it's brand new, and it's a reminder to all of us every day that we're up here of what we are about. And so what you're seeing here as far as the legislative agenda was set by last year's board. And in essence, it was set underneath another mission, okay? Not a great deal of difference, but, enough for us to be aware. So I just, want us to be aware that we will now have an opportunity to set our own legislative agenda, okay? That's why it's wonderful that we're going through this process, and we're going to be going into committee talking about the policy issues that we've separated out. One thing that I remember was very, very, insightful for me was at the point, I believe it was Commissioner, or is that what his name is, Franz, who was with the management, the Minnesota Management Budget Office. And he came up to the 26th Avenue, and his comment was, "This is shovel ready." And that is why we got the funding. I am totally and absolutely convinced of that, and how important it is. And so we are so teed up this year, I believe, with these bonding projects. And I'm very excited, about what we have to work with. And the fact that there's this thread of climate resiliency throughout all of them, I think is very, very significant. So with that, I think that's all I have. We do have one more person who apparently was delayed and was not able to make it during our open time who would like to speak. If commissioners are okay with that, I'm then going to open up our open time and allow Roxanne O'Brien to approach us and speak. Roxanne, if you'd like to, please address us. This is our time to listen to you. We don't allow any harassing or discriminatory comments. Please give your name and your address if you're comfortable for the record. Go right ahead for 3 minutes.
Hi. I don't put my address, even though I'm pretty sure it's easy to find. I don't say it anymore. But thanks for having me. My name is Roxanne O'Brien. I do live on the north side. I'm mostly known as an environmental justice advocate, but I work on any issues that impact everyone in my community. So I'm here today, though, not just representing myself as a resident, but also as a member and organizer of Community Members for Environmental Justice. You probably heard that we are a part of the litigation against the Upper Harbor Terminal development. And so I was actually coming today to just let you guys know, to take that into consideration as you make, I think you already voted on something today around it, but, as you move forward with these votes, there's community members who are concerned about the way that developments are happening and the way that governments in different jurisdictions are participating in developments and business as usual. And we are asking you guys to pause and start to really think about these decisions that you're making that are going to impact us for the next, 50 to 100 years, more than that. But I feel like, again, we are in litigation, and we're hoping that at some point people start to pause and stop making so many votes and decisions on something that's now in litigation. So that's one thing. But then I also had heard that there's some land that is now up for sale, the land under Northern Metals. So it's owned by the Isaacs family. I know there's a lot of history between the park board and the Isaacs family, and there's a lot of history that I don't know about. But I've dedicated at least 10 plus years with my coalition community members for environmental justice, we've been working on getting Northern Metals out of here for about 10 years. And we've been on the front lines, like constantly. You can Google us. We have been fighting hard. We've been trying to get every single department to work on this because we feel like there's responsibility everywhere. But our concerns, I'm happy that now finally Northern Metals is probably on its way out of here, right? That's the great thing. It's like, here's this major opportunity in history right now. But since a lot of us have been working on this fight and have been on the front lines, we feel like, people kind of owe us something. We've been out here working really hard to clean up the soil, to keep the river, doing the hard labor out here. And a lot of times we don't see people show up until it's time to purchase something or own something. And so, you guys, I know I probably don't have no more time left, and I didn't even read anything on here. I just kind of was trying to tell you about, we have built partnerships with just about every entity here, the MPCA, the Green Zones, the Sustainability Office, the government all the way around, the state legislator, the bonding bills. We've been out here doing the organizing to make something better for our community, and we want that opportunity. I'm finding out there's multiple buyers now for that land. And, it's our turn. It's our turn. And we're never invited to the table. Matter of fact, I just found out about this today. And I'm finding out about this from people who I know in my community, who know I've been working on this, who know my community, we've been showing up, and I'm just finding out about it. And so I'm concerned. I'm concerned that the park board is not interested in buying this. I'm concerned that these developers didn't reach out to anybody who's been working on this. I'm concerned. This is happening too much. Upper Harbor Terminal, Northern Metals. I mean, it's all about the corridor, you know what I mean? The river. We've got to transition to something better. And so I think that's just the gist of when do you guys reach out to us? When do we come to the table? When do we get the information?
Well, thank you for sharing
you.
with us, Roxanne, and I hope that you will stay in touch. So.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the time, and thanks for not yelling at me for going over.
Okay, once again, I'm closing open time. And so I will go to, oh, yes.
There is one item we should go back to.
Oh, that's right. I so apologize. Yes, we needed actually to have a roll call vote on, it's a land transaction, and now, of course, I've forgotten. It's Resolution 2022-121. So I am going to have to ask Secretary Ringgold to read the roll on that.
Yeah, and if I could add, I should have caught this. I was engaged in something earlier in the meeting, and that was my bad. When the park board enters into real estate matters, it takes 2/3 votes to do so. And just in case there's any question, it's a special provision in the charter. And so it's just better for the record if we have an actual roll call. I think the record would show tonight that all the commissioners are here and present, so we probably could do that. But if there's ever any question, a roll call is better on these matters. And I do know that Commissioner Smith had in committee noted her recusal on this, and we probably deserves, I think her proper vote should be voted as a recusal or noted on the record rather than, she did abstain, but that was disclosed to you before, Madam Chair, and just better for the record. And I apologize, I was engaged in something earlier in the meeting and I shouldn't have been.
We're all in a learning mode. Excuse me. Yes, Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Forney. Do we need to remove and second this motion as well, in your opinion, Council Rice?
It probably would be best to just bring yes. I mean, if you do make those motions, Commissioner Musich.
All right,
Move to reconsider the previous action on this, and everyone voted on the prevailing side except Commissioner Smith.
Okay. I would like to move to reconsider item 2022-121. Is that right?
Yep.
Resolution accepting the conveyance of Market Square from Hennepin County Housing and Redevelopment Authority according to the terms of the parkland dedication an operating agreement for the Lake and Hiawatha Development Project and approving an assignment of rights of the lease of the agreement between Hennepin County Housing and Redevelopment Authority and the Metropolitan Council.
Second.
Thank you. Please note that Vice President Smith is recusing herself. Would the secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner Abeni?
Aye.
Commissioner Musich?
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Aye.
Commissioner Elper?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Commissioner Mentz?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Vice President Smith recuses. President Forney?
Aye.
You have 8 ayes, 1 has recused.
That motion carries. Wonderful. So we move to petitions and communication, and what is tradition is we just kind of go down the roll, or the dais. So I'm going to start at this end with Commissioner Thompson. And if you don't have anything you wish to report, you can just say pass.
There's so much going on the north side these days, starting with the very first comments of Superintendent Bangora, and I love that Coach Tate is here. So I will just take a moment to I suppose be with the community, because it's been one thing after another. I don't need to repeat it, but that's all I report from District 2. It's been a hard week.
Mr. Schaefer.
And we just want to know that we all stand with everyone who's experiencing this pain from whatever district we're in. We stand with you. I just want to say today, thank you for all the people that I've gotten to meet in these first 44 days of being on the job. It's been a joy. I've been able to meet with 11 out of 13 neighborhood groups or leadership teams, 4 different friends groups, many staff meetings, and have learned a ton. So I am grateful for the opportunity to engage in learning, and I want to tell you all thank you, especially staff, for your my questions, being patient with that, and I look forward to the days ahead. That's it.
Commissioner Olson.
Pass.
Commissioner Musich.
Pass.
And I'll go then to Commissioner Menz.
I will say that there's been a lot of discussion in my world this week around a possible teacher strike as a school teacher. And I want to say that as a park board commissioner, it is challenging for me to negotiate both of those worlds. But what I want to be clear with our board and with the superintendent is that the children and the families are the priority for the park board. And I think that we have an opportunity to stand up and make sure that we're keeping our kids safe. That 12:30 p.m. on a Wednesday, kids should be in school or in buildings, and they should be safe. And it is our responsibility as a park board, it's our responsibility as a city, it is our responsibility as a school system, whether we're on strike or not, to make sure that we are keeping our kids safe. And I hope and I know that that is really prevalent for a lot of us up here. And I know that our staff and the people who work for the park board are going to work as hard as they can to make sure that our kids are safe during a time of possible crisis. I would also like to, my iPad with the, came out. I would also like to reiterate that this is, I'm going to continue to read this until we possibly adopt it. We collectively acknowledge that the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board system is located on traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of indigenous people. The land holds great historical, spiritual, and personal significance for its original stewards, the Native nations, and peoples of this region, including the Dakota and Ojibwe people. We recognize that a statement like this needs to be dynamic and change as we continue to learn, understand, and heal our relationship with the indigenous community. I'm excited that we possibly could bring a resolution around creating a land acknowledgement for the largest landholder in the city of Minneapolis, and that would be a huge step forward. And I we're working on that now. So thank you. That's all I have to report.
Commissioner Alper.
Thank you. I have a few things tonight. I think I would just like to say what Commissioner Menz said right now about the need to keep our kids safe, to be there for them, and to make sure, and these are my words, they're not just pawns in disagreements between adults. Really, it feels really important to me, and as a mom to an elementary school student who attends Rec Plus, you know, Rec Plus was there for me as a parent this past year, and I think that we need to be there for working families, for our kids, if something does come to pass, so I would be supportive of that. What I also wanted to say tonight is that I sent out my first district newsletter, and I'm very excited about it, happy to share with anybody who would like to be part of that list. It's been a busy 44 days, as Commissioner Schaefer remarked. I also had the pleasure of attending various events, including, I love ice skating, and I got to attend the Matthews Park Fire and Ice Festival, which was great. Also met with, community groups and neighborhood groups. I'd also like to say a special thanks to our partners with Hennepin County, specifically to Commissioner Angela Conley and Chair Marion Green, who I know are looking at Hennepin County youth sports grants. And we as a park board frequently receive these grants, and I am so thrilled that they are willing to reconsider a $250,000 grant for a skate park at Central Gym Park, and that's coming before them on February 22nd. So I'm just really excited about that, because people and residents of the Central neighborhood truly deserve this investment. So that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Abene.
Yes, thank you, President Forney. I just want to give a quick thank you to Chief Ahado, Sergeant Cannon, and the 4 p.m. roll call officers for letting me meet with them and spend some time learning about our Minneapolis Park and Rec Police Department. Thank you very much.
Vice President Smith.
All right. I have a lot of things I'd love to share, but most importantly, just extending solidarity with community and reiterating the fact that when we talk about the violence and the things that are plaguing our city, it's not just about young people. Young people are unfortunately oftentimes innocent bystanders in what we're experiencing, and so we have to continue to tackle this from an intergenerational perspective, because it's not just about young people being safe during the day. It's about maybe their grandmothers or aunts or whoever is walking them to the bus stops and picking them up from the bus stops or trying to take them someplace. And so when we think about what we have as a park board and the great ability we have to be the solution, not to every problem, but to the problems that involve the lack of building and constructive space, that we do so like urgently, like it was yesterday. And so that we continue to support the frontline staff that sacrifice their family time, that get up, that are scared to walk to work, but they continue to show up because they know the importance of young people seeing the familiar face, for the elder that they see on their way there, for the elders who pop in with their children. It's important for all of us. And so I just say, let's continue to support our staff, but let's also continue to support our community as a whole and figure out how we can have an impact now and not tomorrow when we're facing another tragedy. Thank you.
Thank you all. I'll start out with the fun stuff. I just am always amazed at, how we Minneapolitans and everything can celebrate winter. I know most communities in the world would think that we were weird with the art shanty, the kite festival, the Lopet. I had the joy of going to the Luminary Lopet with Commissioner Schaefer, and it's just amazing, how we all can find such joy, in bitter cold, et cetera. So it's been a joyous time for me. I think I've indicated that this is our first meeting in person, and there were processes, logistics that occurred while we were in our virtual board meetings. And so I am going to refer to the Standards and Conduct Committee to review some of those protocols and logistics that resulted from those virtual board meetings, such as we've had phone-in, we had emails read. So I'm going to ask that the co-chairs convene. And I would also like to say that is a place for us to look at some of the protocols of the meeting and maybe to re-examine some of them. And one of them, I think, to be considered is what Commissioner Menz brought up about the land acknowledgement. I think that's something we might want to consider, but I'll leave it up to that committee to discuss those things and bring that forward. Going to say some other things. Oh, I also want to mention, to the community and everything that this board is going to be meeting next Wednesday at North Mississippi to frame our strategic directions. This is, to me, a very exciting time. I believe we're going to be having 2 retreats, and it will set forward what it is that this group, this body would like to accomplish. So I'm very excited about that. I also want to acknowledge a really, really wonderful news article that was done by Susan Dew in the Star Tribune, and acknowledging that North Commons has the ability to be a sanctuary. And I think that was just so powerful to read that. That is what I hope, that we truly can make that. Which brings me, to our, anyway, sorry, I was going to lose it there for a second. Our legislative agenda is very, very significant. We just closed out a very big contract for North Common, the Upper Harbor Terminal. And I came to the realization that I started working on the Above the Falls in 2013. That's almost 2 decades that we've been working at this. And how important it is, as you say, Roxanne, that we are listening to the community on that. That was a very large extension of that contract and everything, because that project really did not have a defined scope. And that's why it took so much, and that we needed to, that extra time, that extra effort to be able to connect with the community. I can't say that we did a perfect job, but how important it is. And for us to understand that, North Commons isn't necessarily also a defined project. So we need to be able to be flexible and understand, and listen as Roxanne has spoken to the community. And I've had the joy of working with a lot of amazing people on the Above the Falls and on River First. And one of them is Mary Jamin McGuire, who's presently in hospice. And there's so many other people that have gone before us that have tried to set forth this vision of reclaiming the Mississippi for our communities. And I'm just so grateful to all of you. I could talk about so many of them and everything, but, we've done a huge, huge lift in this. And I just get goosebumps thinking about that river can be accessible to everybody, and particularly to the community that we're actually sitting in right now. Okay, with that, and sorry again, do I take it to roll call vote? This is so foreign. We have not done this in so long. Okay.
No, there'd be no further business. The meeting's adjourned.
Okay. I do proclaim the meeting is adjourned, and we will move then on to the legislative committee. Co-chair Olson, please.
All right, I would like to now call to order the Legislative and Intergovernmental Committee. Secretary Ringgold, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Thompson,
Here.
Vice President Smith,
President.
Commissioner Mentz,
Here.
Co-Chair Benny,
Here.
Co-Chair Olson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right. I would like to move the approval of the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. It is approved. And approval of the minutes, Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021, and Wednesday, November 17th, 2021. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we have
Aye.
a movement second?
I don't think we need.
You don't need seconds in committee, sorry. All right, all those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the minutes are approved. All right, so we have one action item today, which will include several amendments, but I will first move Resolution 2022-133, resolution approving the policy issues for the 2022 state legislative agenda of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. All right, moving on to discussion then, and there are several amendments up here. I will move the ones that I have submitted first here, and I will move Amendment 2, which would delete text referring to the Stanek Law and preemption and add the language, oppose preemption. The MPRB opposes all preemption which infringes on its rights to govern and will work to repeal and prevent all laws and bills which preempt MPRB authority. And a little bit on this, just to my amendment here, and why I put this forward. A lot of kind of what I wanted to put forward was sort of condensing and just kind of clarifying what we had. The previous preemption language had some old policies that were no longer really relevant. And the Stanek law language, I believe, fits under this new proposed language, so it's something that we would still be pursuing as legislation, and it's something that if a bill were to go forward repealing this bill, we would then be able to, as a park board, discuss having residency requirements for our police. So just kind of figure it all fit under that umbrella. So if there's any discussion to that. President Forney.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not on this committee, Chair Olson, the co-chair, excuse me. Appreciate it. And I believe that the preemption is something worthy of consideration, although I have to say it has always bothered me that the legislature is who has told us that something like open meeting, okay, we need to do all jurisdictions, from what I understand, in Minnesota, but they do not abide by it themselves. So I find a great deal of hypocrisy in this, and so in some ways I do think this is a good thing, but I have some questions about the values of it. So, thank you.
Any more discussion? Co-Chair Benny.
Yes, thank you, Co-Chair Olson. I think that I support this and this consolidation of language and more general statement because I do think that preemption is kind of can be an overreach for the legislature that affects other governing bodies in the state. And so I think there may not be a lot of active lobbying on this in general, but I think that it's a reasonable position for the park board to hold, that we have the right to self-govern, as you so well wrote. So that's my statement.
Any more discussion? Any more discussion? All right, seeing none, I will move to vote to approve the amendment. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the amendment passes. I will move on to the next amendment here, also proposed by myself. So amendment number 3 would delete the text referring to exaggerated 911 calls and add under the policy issues, public safety. The MPRB supports and will supplement public safety reform efforts, which could include but are not limited to police arbitration reform, civilian oversight of peace officers, alternative community / mental health first responders, and funding of holistic community violence prevention. The MPRB will prioritize working in a supportive role with partners who share these goals and who represent communities of color and communities most affected by crime and violence. And then, this is kind of odd, but I'm going to amend the amendment I just read to add after but are not limited to ban on no-knock warrants, comma, increased penalties for exaggerated 911 calls, comma. And to the discussion of the amendment to the amendment, first, the reason that I kind of separated it, kind of figured that these might be more contentious discussion topics, and so I wanted to, separate that out specifically. And one, no-knock warrants, we saw that, Amir Locke was, tragically killed, and there has been, as a result, a fairly strong push at the legislature to have stricter rules around when no-knock warrants can be conducted. And so I think that is something that we should as well play a supplemental role in. So I think that could fit into the First Amendment quite well. So that is why I think we should have that. On the exaggerated 911 calls, this is something that the previous board, they had a whole separate section to this, and that was as a result of the Somali teenagers who they had a difficult interaction with the Minneapolis Park Police, and they were saying that it was due to discrimination, due to a 911 call, which it was, false or exaggerated. And so I think that's kind of the reasoning behind that, and there are, and I think there's good logic behind it as well. And so I would be for having this in the greater amendment, but I wanted to have those separate to have a discussion. So is there, I see the light from Commissioner Thompson.
Yes, this is on your amendment to the amendment.
Yeah.
Just reminds me of a book I've read. I would need some guidance from Chief Ohado, but we're parks, so where would we be ever doing a no-knock warrant? I don't understand why that would make it in here. And also 911 calls, I believe are all, has nothing in our jurisdiction, so I don't understand the purpose to having this be for parks legislative agenda. Is any?
I'm terribly sorry.
Yeah, so we will have a full discussion first. Thank you.
By the way, there's no question answered about that as well. I'm sorry for speaking up,
I-
but obviously I'm very engaged, and you guys did actually put me on that committee, so. it's not like I-
Excuse me, we don't take comments from the public at this point in time.
Because you said you want to
Thank you.
listen to the community,
We don't
but
take-
as you can see, these processes aren't really meant to listen
So,
to us.
it was my understanding that the previous board broke our sort of connection with MPD in terms of taking support on calls. And so then again, I just don't understand where the no-knock warrant, where that would ever come into play for us. Yeah. So that's my comment / question on the amendment to the amendment.
Co-Chair Benny, did you want to respond to that?
Not to that, just generally I'd like to speak to the amendment too.
Chief Ohata, would you like to respond to that?
Oh,
Sure. Yeah, I guess if.
Co-Chair Olson, Commissioner Thompson, as I understand your question, you're asking if the park police serve no-knock warrants?
Yeah, is that ever anything that comes up for us jurisdictionally?
No, in my time with the park police, I'm not aware of any no-knock warrant that the park police have served.
Thank you.
Co-Chair Benny.
yeah, sorry about that. I think just to comment on the amendment to the amendment, that's a pretty, that's a pretty powerful piece of information for me about the no-knock warrant aspect of this. And in terms of the exaggerated 911 calls, before that would get advanced, I would really want to understand a little bit more from a data perspective on that, because, I can see, especially with this time that we're in with fewer police officers in general and slower response times, I don't know how people sometimes flag the attention of the 911 operator in order to, elevate their request. So I'm not comfortable adding that. I don't have enough information on the value of that, and it doesn't quite seem like it fits in our wheelhouse, so just wanted to say that.
Yeah, so I would say in response to Commissioner Thompson's questions and to the testimony from Chief Ohata, with this greater public safety language and, towards the end, what I was trying to construct it as, I am trying to frame it as us being a supportive body who, while may not be, participating in these acts necessarily, we do recognize what, community has gone through and what community leaders are pushing for, and that we are supportive of that. Because we do, we do have a force, right? And so we do have a bit of a say, and so it is something that I think that we can participate in. And so that's just how, I would just, reason that why we are including this. Yeah, the exaggerated, and again, I also see, Co-Chair, I see Benny around 911 calls. I see your reasoning on that. Again, I would point to within the language, it states that we would play a supporting and a supplemental role. And we are prioritizing working with partners who represent communities of color and communities most affected by crime and violence. And so those are the communities and the legislators and the groups who would be crafting the legislation around this. And so what this statement, I think, acknowledges is that we trust those groups to do the appropriate work. And so that is, again, why I think it would be a good point. So to you, Commissioner Mentz.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson, Co-Chair Olson. I would agree that I feel like the amendment to the amendment feels a little performative, but I do see the gesture. And I do agree that we do have a police force, and I appreciate Commissioner Olson raising that issue, that we do monitor and maintain a police force, and that there will possibly be times where we have to adjust things that do come jurisdictionally between us. And thank you to Chief Ohata for explaining what we have in our jurisdiction. I won't be supporting the amendment to the amendment, and most likely won't support the amendment unless there's a little bit more clarity around how this really impacts the policy that we have. I think that we should continue to look at these things. And I think that Commissioner Olson, I appreciate you trying to find places where we can push this in the direction of reform and partnering and making sure that we're moving in the right direction. I just don't know if this is the right avenue at this point.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Sorry, my screen. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm not on this committee. I'm going to just share a personal perspective with the board. Last year, when I was campaigning, one of the things that I said often and heard from residents in District 4 often was, I want you, or I will, stay focused on the mission of the park board and our core competencies, and not keep that laser focus on what we do best, and to focus in on that. And whether these are things that I personally agree with or not, very laudable, I believe we have to be careful to keep that laser focus and to be supportive. We've had a great change in the last period of time within our organization on some of these issues. So I feel like I need to stay focused on that mission. And that's the question that I will have looking at any policy that comes before me or any decision as a commissioner on the park board, because that's what I talked about and that's what I heard last year, is that we would stay focused on what we do best and the mission of the parks. And so just that's my 2 cents.
Commissioner Menz, was your light still up? Okay. Co-Chair Benny.
Yeah, and I really appreciate those comments from guest speaker, Commissioner Schaefer, who's not on the committee. But I actually would echo that. And actually, Co-Chair Olson, I just want to say, you and I had a little discussion too about this, and public safety came up a lot during my campaign. I'm sure it did for all of us on the doors and all of that. But the residents of that, the citizens of Minneapolis, and I spoke to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, are sophisticated to know that we should work from our strengths, and we can do a lot of good if all of the agencies in our city are working from our strengths. So I just wanted to kind of sort of tack that on to what Commissioner Schaefer said. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Oh, sorry, Commissioner Mentz.
Sorry. Really quick, though, I do, and Commissioner Benny, I really appreciate your comments. I do think, though, that there are going to be times where our small police force and the jurisdiction that we have over that entity could provide opportunity to push reform and change in larger police forces. So that's why I really appreciate Commissioner Olson bringing this forward. I won't be supporting the amendment. I won't be supporting them, but I think that it is something that we may have to address, and we need to be laser focused on that public safety too, because that is part of our jurisdiction and part of our mission and part of historic inequities.
Okay. Sorry, Secretary Ringgold.
Co-Chair Olson, I just want to make sure I'm tracking this correctly. Did you move both the amendment and the amendment to the amendment?
Yeah, we're discussing the amendment to the amendment right now.
Thank you.
See several lights up, but I'm assuming they're, okay. All right, all those in favor of the amendment to the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? Okay, it does not pass. So now on to discussion of the amendment. And yeah, I would like to address some of the things that were said, because I think some of them were addressed to this amendment to the amendment. First off, I would say that this amendment deletes text related to the exaggerated 911 calls. And so if we do not pass this amendment, we would still have an agenda that pursues the exaggerated 911 call legislation. So I just want to make that clear. Two, this is not performative. This is something that I think is, very serious, and it signifies our role, that it is a supplemental role, and it is absolutely within our lane and our mission of supporting community. This generally, pushing for these reforms is something that communities across the city have been crying for again and again. And the last sentence there, again, we're prioritizing, equity, we're prioritizing listening to communities that have been historically disenfranchised. That language is saying that we will support communities of color and communities most affected by crime and violence when it comes to public safety issues at the legislature. And there are a lot of great groups that are doing a lot of great work. And I'd say that it's absolutely a no-brainer that we can say, hey, we support you. You represent a lot of our constituents. A lot of the folks who are working on this represent probably a majority of the city as far as representatives. So this is something, that I think is absolutely within our wheelhouse. It is absolutely within our both moral and prerogative, but also our day-to-day duties. So that is what I would say to the greater amendment around having an overarching statement on public safety for our legislative agenda. Is there any other Commissioner Thompson?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in because I'm just really splicing up your language here. And I too have an amendment to our legislative agenda coming up soon to be continued. But it focuses on this idea that you put in here, holistic community violence prevention. And that is just very much in line with the amendment I threw in there. So I do respect the nuance of dedicating that maybe this aspect to things isn't as performative as the word has already been said, as compared to maybe some other things. I do believe that it is something that I also ran on, the idea that parks are the best and first place for people to start to heal. So that's my 2 cents on that one. Thank you for that, Co-Chair Olson.
Commissioner Mentz.
Thank you. The performance statement was more on the no-knock warrants, just to be clear. It wasn't on the amendment to the original amendment.
President Forney.
Thank you, Co-Chair Olson. In the room to be able to speak to this and everything, and how important I believe that Commissioner Schaefer spoke to it. That we look to our core mission, and I mentioned that I'm going to be meeting with other jurisdictions, the heads of the other jurisdictions in our community, and if you look at their policy issues, not one of them has anything like this in there. So, and they have, shall I say, those have misused, shall I say, some of these items that are in here. So I appreciate, the sentiment and everything like that, but I don't feel that it is appropriate for this to be on our policy issues. And if people would like to have some more clarity as to what should policy issues be, my read is less is more. So detail is not as significant in a policy issue as it is in other aspects of what we do as our function and everything. So I think our lobbyists can speak to that and everything, but have a snapshot of basically what it is that we're trying to achieve is far more important. And I feel that this amendment goes entirely too much into detail, and like I say, is not a part of our core mission. Thank you for letting me speak.
Co-Chair Benny.
Yeah, and I appreciate the amendment as well. I know we do have another one coming up that's more targeted to youth violence prevention, as Commissioner Thompson mentioned. And again, I'm sticking kind of with the wheelhouse statement because Because the other thing is, if we were looking at this amendment and we were trying to measure success with our legislative work at the end of the session, how would we know if we were successful here? If these are still going to be entrenched issues that our systems are grappling with, and you hear the state is now really engaging the public safety conversation, of course our city has been for a long time. If we can laser focus in on the work that's in the works for our kids in this city, that's a leap. So I understand it, but I'm not going to support it, and I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Co-Chair Olson. Quick question. Would you consider a more concise statement for the public safety policy issue? Maybe making it more direct in terms of who we would work with in partnership to address this kind of amendment that you have here. I think it's excellent, and certainly it challenges us to think about kind of what we add in terms of value as a park in terms of public safety. So I just maybe think if you can bring it down a little bit, maybe it will maybe feel more digestible to folks to consider your amendment here.
Yeah, so are you referring to...
Just a little wordsmithing. I don't have it right here on the spot, but like I just, yeah.
Are you referring to the, specific policies that we would include, or at the bottom there, who we would work with?
I think here on the bottom where you say like that we will prioritize working in supportive roles with partners who share these goals and represent communities of colors and communities most affected by crime and violence. Like just maybe wordsmithing some of this to make it more concise, to just say that like simply that we want to work in partnership with community in true efforts as we talk about public safety. And maybe that may not work anyway. I'm not sure kind of where people are. I hear people saying they want to stick in the wheelhouse, but clearly none of that is working for our city or our state or our country, because like people are dying right now while we're in this meeting. And so we all have to figure this out collectively. And I'm all for like, if you're the butcher, be the butcher, but sometimes the butcher might render first aid because he understands certain things, and that's not necessarily one specialty, but certainly in a crisis, you don't let someone bleed out. So this maybe have to take offline, but I do appreciate, I appreciate your efforts here. I see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I will say, if this amendment is voted down, we can always bring language forward in the future, amending it. And that is something that, I would absolutely consider, because I do really think it's important that we have some sort of public safety statement, because we are a provider of public safety. Now, to the second half, I think we could make that more specific, certainly. The group I had in mind when considering this was the People of Color and Indigenous Caucus at the state capitol. They're, Representative Cedric Frazier, Athena Hollins, they're doing a lot of the, kind of vanguard work on this, and I think are really setting the standard. So, but I think at least on that side, being specific kind of, limits us more. And what I'm hearing from folks is that they don't want to commit, or from some folks is that they don't want to commit to things like police arbitration reform or civilian oversight of peace officers or whatever are specific policies. So, I would encourage the members of this committee, I can kind of see where this is going, but I would encourage them to please reach out to me if you have language or edits that would make you comfortable with this, because I think it's really important. I would just, again, once more like to say that, so never mind. Any further discussion? Commissioner Menz.
It's not, I'm sorry. I need a clicker. Thank you, Commissioner Olson. I'm wondering if we vote this down in committee, it doesn't move forward to the full board. If we vote for it, it moves forward to the full board and still is subject to amendments? Okay. I'm wondering if it does deserve a full board discussion, and it might be shot down there. Because I do agree that with what Commissioner Smith said, that we can't continue to just do nothing. But I would wonder if you'd consider just amending the proposal to include that last sentence.
Yes, and then, and yeah, maybe then I could amend to have the other stuff so we could have a full yeah, okay. I will move to,
You'd have to move, so I would move that we amend the amendment to only include the last sentence.
there's.
Or ask you to do that.
I think I would prefer, if we do want to have a full board discussion on this, that we pass it as is and you offer an amendment with grammar that works and stuff, because there's some wording in here that isn't quite, doesn't really make sense. So I'm seeing more lights, though. Let's try to, we've discussed this quite a bit, so let's try to.
No, I just was going to say, if you limit it to the last sentence, we don't know what these goals are.
Right.
Okay, so that's all. I'm buttoned out now. I'm done.
Yes. And President Forney.
Thank you, Ken. I just need to, number one, remind everybody, the policy issues that are, I'm not sure where they are right now, but anyway, the policy issues that we were discussing, whatever, at the legislative breakfast, I'll say, okay, those were passed by last year's board, okay? You will have the opportunity to set your own for next year, okay? And I say that because the other jurisdictions that I was talking about, they have not changed what last year's did. So like the city council has not changed, this city council has not changed the policy issues from last year that were passed by a totally different group. So I just need you to know that it is very unusual to change up policy issues from what was set. I don't even know, when was this set? Anyway, it's been several months, at least, whatever, since it was set. So I appreciate that we are all so engaged in this, but just realize that, we're doing it in some ways reverse. And that's why I'm so excited for next week. We begin our mutual conversation about what is it that we want to accomplish? What are our strategic directions? And this might be one of them, but it might be a little bit premature for us to be setting it here. So I apologize, but I had to say that for you all.
All right, well, I think we've run the course on this discussion. So all those in favor of this amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Abstentions.
I vote aye.
Okay, so it passes. All right. Sorry, computer froze, or did not froze, it slept. All right, on to the next one. Amendment number 4, this would delete the text referring to pedestrian and bikes and divestment in fossil fuels, and it would add the language, climate action. The MPRB believes that global climate change is the greatest challenge to the future well-being of the people of Minneapolis. The MPRB supports extensive and comprehensive efforts to reduce carbon emissions, maintain and restore natural spaces, and increase climate resilience in our most vulnerable communities. Given these goals, the MPRB will pursue the following policy objectives. First being, advocate at all levels of government for policies which result in increased development of improved pedestrian and bike infrastructure. Supplement efforts to divest all public funds from fossil fuels. And thirdly, broadly and publicly support other political efforts which are deemed to be in line with MPRB climate goals, with the intention of being a helpful coalition partner in the full spectrum of climate advocacy. So just to this, I thought it would be appropriate that we have an overarching legislative climate action, call to action. And, the bullet points underneath include some of the previous boards' discussions or policy goals related that I think fit under this, and then a more broad statement that, we would participate where we see fit. I will also say, though, there will be some amendments after this that could potentially fit under this, but I think if we want to distinguish those, it's important that, not everything climate related would have to go under this in the future. So that's the logic and reasoning behind this. Is there any discussion on amendment number 4? Commissioner Thompson.
I promise I'll be brief. I really appreciate what this is trying to do again, but I just feel like for our goals, there needs to be some level of measurability of what we're putting forth for a policy. And since I'm not seeing that here, I feel like this is a discussion maybe past boards have had, and maybe I'm totally wrong, but I appreciate it, but I don't understand what it has, again, how it would be a policy, if that makes sense. Like, what measurable goal would be an outcome? So, 2 cents off.
So I could just respond to that. I absolutely think that's a fair critique of these. And again, I will say a couple of these are the previous board, and I was just trying to have an overarching statement that we could put future climate goals underneath. And I will say that, we don't, I think for every statement that we make under this, we don't necessarily have to say, we will feel satisfied when this criteria is met. I do think that, we get reports, we get understanding from our legislative team. They could say that, hey, there was, 100 million or this kind of thing passed that means that bike and pedestrian infrastructure will be improved in such and such way. And then we could say, okay, well, that goal was met. Or they could even report that, we have, done enough efforts that there is, a solid movement at the Capitol on this, and we could say that we're satisfied for that year of effort, and we could remove it and move something else. And so, I do think that you're right. In some ways, it is a bit vague, but I think there are ways that we can, demonstrate success without necessarily having a very specific end result. Is there any further discussion on this amendment? President Forney.
Thank you, Co-Chair Holson. I think that the paragraph is a good, as you indicate, overarching goal. I would say the bullet points, I would delete those. I think, we can ask our lobbyists what they're feeling, but, it is too prescriptive, too much detail. It is difficult to advocate for at the legislature, and that's why I would suggest that the bullet points be deleted from the amendment.
Commissioner Benny, Co-Chair Benny.
That's okay. So, and again, I'm not trying to be a jerk here, but there is kind of a performative thing here, and it's not my. I think I'm interested in outcomes that are achievable and actual progress. And so, for example, I'm not actually sure that climate change is our greatest challenge in the future of Minneapolis. It could be income inequality, honestly, or other factors. And so the statement's just so much. And so that's one comment. And then, I do think, like, the second sentence, I see our wheelhouse there more, natural spaces and so on. And then down in the bullets, I guess, particularly, the divestment and fossil fuels, if we have, so many staff hours to devote to our lobbying efforts, we can get so much further if we focus in on our natural land management, acquisition of future lands, preserving available lands in the commons at some point. There are a lot of things that we could do. So I'm very much interested in, I don't mind detail in the amendments so much, but I'm interested in stuff that's going to take us forward and not just sort of always try to be showing our values or something like that, so.
Yeah, I would just like to reiterate, we're doing something a little tricky, which I think President Forney has kind of hinted at here. And so in response to your comments there, Co-Chair Benny, the first statement, that was kind of grafted from the, I think it was the previous board's divestment of fossil fuel language. And so I was trying to kind of tie that in so that we could have our own sort of take on it that we could then put what we want in the other thing. So, yeah, we could have a discussion all day on the divestment of public funds from fossil fuels. I think that's, quite broad, and I don't think there's quite a lot of, support, honestly, or political will that's moving in that direction, so it would be a big lift. So I do agree with you on that. But, I didn't feel comfortable necessarily deleting that aspect of what the previous board had approved. So that's the logic there. All right, is there any other discussion on this? Seeing none, we move to a vote on amendment number 4. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? Okay. All right, we will now move on to amendment number 5. Co-Chair Benny, to your amendment.
Okay.
Did that motion pass or fail?
It failed. It sounded like it was 2-3.
The chair should announce then his or her interpretation of the vote.
Okay, the amendment fails.
Okay. So Amendment 5 in front of us, I'll read. It says stormwater, amend Minnesota Statute 444.075, subdivision 3A, to include collection of charges for water quality improvements and rate controls. Amend Minnesota Rules Chapter 7001 and 7090 as necessary to accelerate water quality and water treatment improvements for municipal storm sewer systems through standalone projects and initiatives. I'll just say, just the thing that's a little maybe confusing in the language is the word charges. It basically means like stormwater fees or utility fees that we all pay, all properties pay in Minneapolis and many other communities for stormwater, storm sewer systems, so.
Okay, any discussion to this amendment? I just have something real quick to say. I think it's a good amendment. I think it is kind of right in the sweet spot. Commissioner Thompson was speaking earlier to having some specificity and good accomplishable goals, and I think this does it by naming statute. I will say, also pointing to folks having a laser focus, and maybe this is something that we'll have a discussion on future amendments. We are adding quite a bit of amendments, and so I frankly, Co-Chair Benny, I'm wondering, as we go through your other amendments, if you could almost like rank which ones are most important to you.
Okay.
And just because I do think it's maybe important that we, value the resources the limited resources that we have. And so I want to know which ones are most important to you, if that's possible, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. They're in order of importance. So that's the most important, and then 6, 7, 8, and 9, so.
Okay, that's very helpful. And as we get to it, I think it would be wise of us to consider at which point perhaps we could get staff up here, maybe at which point they think that it might be too big of a lift for what we're asking them to do. So any further discussion on this amendment?
I'll just add one other point. So just to clarify that part of Minnesota Statute 444 allows municipalities or other bodies to collect stormwater fees, basically. That's how they're referred to, for certain things like expanding the system, maintenance, and so on. But currently in the list of reasons why you can collect stormwater fees, water quality improvements or rate control improvements are not currently listed as reasons to collect fees. So that's where this is coming from.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. The amendment passes. On to Amendment 6. Co-Chair Abeni, to your amendment.
Thank you. Okay. So this one modifies an existing bit of text, and it would be to delete the reference to South Minneapolis specific groundwater and add groundwater management. Advocate for state-led groundwater strategies to address rising groundwaters resulting from changing weather patterns. Clarify goals for appropriating, dewatering, and regulating groundwater. Better define responsible governmental unit duties and responsibilities. Must be coordinated with stormwater volume reduction and groundwater recharge goals and requirements.
Okay. Any discussion on this amendment? Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, Chair Olson. I'm not on this committee, so I appreciate being given an opportunity to speak. This has been a very big issue in my district, but with our changing climate, I anticipate it will ultimately impact every one of our districts. So I think it is incredibly important for us to continue to advocate for legislation that starts helping communities like ours adapt. Thanks.
Co-Chair Abeni.
And thank you, Commissioner Musich, for those comments. As the future is coming and looming, and we may see rising groundwater throughout our lowlands in our city, which there are many, if we're pushing for the agencies that have the most responsibility, like the DNR and so on, to clarify those roles and to sort of delegate their responsibilities, I think it would position us better to adapt as the changes come forward. So,
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of amendment number 6, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes. Okay, now on to amendment number 7. Commissioner Benny, to your amendment.
yes, thank you. This one is not replacing any additional text, or any previous text. Climate mitigation and adaptation. Parkland is finally recognized for its safeguarding benefits against changing weather patterns. Parkland provides mitigation through carbon sequestration in soils and plants while helping us adapt through water management opportunities and heat island reduction. Sustaining fundamental ecological functions of land and water must be a top priority. The investment in Parkland must acknowledge and support its ecological value.
Would you like to discuss?
Yeah. So this is more of the thinking here is that we have funding mechanisms for things we get through the sales tax, and the legacy money and all of that for bonding and capital projects, but we're not actually funding the sustained fundamental ecological functions of land and water. We're not doing that anywhere that I can see. We do it on a project-by-project basis, but in my opinion, it should be routine to the work that we're doing. And so this is more of a value statement that's saying, Parkland it must be valued and prioritized for that function, so.
Any discussion to this amendment? Commissioner Menz.
I wonder how this would impact the amount of land we do maintain and the amount of land we might acquire. And I'm just hesitant to do that because we hold so much land that could have use, or we could have use for other purposes. So I'm hesitant to allow this amendment to go by, because I don't know how it would impact us acquiring land, or if it, yeah, I'm hesitant as to what it could, and how it could impact those future.
Yeah, and if I may say something, you know, so I will say, you know, part of the reason why, you know, I think this is in some ways similar to my climate amendment, and I think it's kind of diffuse, and I'm not really sure there's actionable stuff within here. Personally, I think it's certainly admirable, but I would almost want to have us generally, you know, maybe come back with something that is, you know, more specific that we would want to look at, and just kind of, given the economy of what we are able to do, I'm not sure that this is necessarily ready for the full policy agenda. So I think I'll probably vote against it for those reasons. Just letting you know. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
The amendment does not pass. On to amendment number 8. Co-Chair Benny, please, to your amendment.
Thank you. This one is urban natural resources. Natural resources in urban areas experience more stressors from people and the built environment. These areas also provide immeasurable benefit to people, animals, and the ecological health and resiliency. Public stewards of urban natural resources must be funded to proactively improve water quality, protect habitat, manage invasive plants and animals, and support a flourishing tree canopy. This work must be proactive, routine, and ongoing. So this one is similar to the last one, but different. This is really about our natural resources, which happen to be in the commons, which happen to be in our park system here in Minneapolis. And again, we need to steward those resources and give them the special care they deserve and fund them to do that. So.
Yeah, I am interested in the, sorry, I probably shouldn't talk first. I should let others folks. Is there any discussion on, any further discussion on this one? Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you so much, Co-Chair Olson and Co-Chair Benny. I just want to say, since I'm very much into things that are like measurable, I don't necessarily see this in the wording as being such, but it is something that in general I'm incredibly passionate about, and I think that is very much something we need to constantly be cognizant of, is that as our city builds and builds and builds around us, we need to have more and more protections toward what we have in our green space. Obviously, we're the Parks Department. So, yeah, the language is a little fuzzy for me, but I respect what's going on here and the intent behind it. It's 2 cents.
Any further discussion? I would like to, I am intrigued by specifically the language, again, having something specific, public stewards of urban and just saying how, and they must be funded. And so I wonder if there is work for a language, you know, perhaps finding some source of specific, like, you know, urban steward within the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, or something that we can, because I think it is intriguing, and I wonder if that's something that's truly deficient within our state and something that needs to be funded. But yeah, until, you know, I think we have a broader thing, I think I'm going to kind of echo some of the words from Commissioner Thompson. Any further discussion? Commissioner Mentz?
Yeah, I echo that sentiment. And I'm also wondering, like, how do these amendments, like, how will they change the legislative agenda, and how will they change how we speak? This feels like we already do this, but maybe it needs to be more highlighted and more specific. But I'm seeing this in, I feel like a lot of, maybe I'm uninformed, but it feels like we're already doing a lot of this stuff. And I'm wondering if this is to make sure that we're advocating for it at the legislative agenda, at the legislative level. But I feel like our staff is probably already doing that.
Yeah, I would like, is there any legislative staff that could maybe speak on that question or that statement?
This is on Amendment 8.
Yeah, and the question being, how much would this alter what we are already doing?
And it's really just a general question because it does feel like we are changing quite a bit. And like President Forney said, you know, this is sort of abnormal to do that. So I'm wondering how much we want less is more.
I mean, if I could, Mr. President, members of the committee, obviously the legislative team will do whatever this board directs as a policy matter. The commissioners decide policy, staff implements the policies and directions you give them. I think you're obviously seeing some of the legislative agenda. You're new to this. It's not an inexhaustible amount of resources we put into this effort. It is significant amount of money that you spend relative to other park agencies. I think we've been tremendously effective, but I'm also mindful that you're all make decisions in a public arena, and people can criticize you for either spending too much or what's perceived to be too much. So I think you try to, my advice has always been to, as you measure twice and cut once as far as what you think is important. And this is a big organization in some ways, but it's small in many others. There's myself, Ms. Johnson's here, Mr. Workman's here tonight, Pamela Gokameyer's here. There's a lot of other staff members who back that up by providing the lobbyists with intelligence and research. There are plenty of times when the board brings initiatives forward and directs the superintendent to undertake this mission or that mission. And so I think it's not an inexhaustible supply of human talent or financial resources to do it, but that's for you all to decide. You vote for the tax levy, you decide where to allocate resources. You know, we've heard a lot of issues tonight about tragedies, and youth violence. I don't know how to exactly answer the question, but you have a lot of priorities about what role this system can play and what the employees can do. But at some level, everyone's human, and the resources and what direction you tell us to do. If you give us, I'll be frank, if you give us every direction in the rule and try to solve every human ill and problem, we're not going to be able to do it. I mean, we don't have those kinds of resources. But if the board is making a clear statement, and I can sense that on the environment and some other ones, that's a compelling issue. And, you know, I don't know if I'm being helpful or not, but you have to weigh it up and tell us where you want us to focus our efforts. And we'll do what you tell us, or try our best to accomplish what direction you give.
I think we were still on your time, Commissioner Menz. Anything in response to that?
Yeah, I agree. We have to vote on these things. I'm just wondering if they're more like part of our strategic planning. And is this something that we want to change right now? Because I'm very supportive of this amendment, but I'm just not sure if it's in the right place. And until I'm sure that it's in the right place, I don't want to set policy. So I would be very supportive of this in some strategic planning, but I don't know if it's a place for an amendment to a legislative agenda at this point.
Co-Chair Betty.
Yeah, and I would say that that I was, thinking as I was writing these about pain points here at the Park Board. Unfunded mandates, unfunded efforts, and so there are huge efforts that go on with volunteers to remove invasive species. There are huge volunteer efforts around habitat. The Park Board is not staffed because this Park Board is not funded in a routine way to do that work. Because I know the staff here at the Park Board would do that work. But we need money that's consistent, not one-time money, because consistent money is the way to have full-time equivalents, to develop a staff base that can do this work. Same with habitat. So this is just to say that, You know, when we talk about infrastructure, big infrastructure bills and all of that, if you look at a water system somewhere in the state, water systems can collect rates. There are ways and mechanisms. This type of thing, tree canopy, water quality, there's no rate we can collect really. There's no mechanism. So I think we should build into our state budgets and prioritization to fund this type of work. That's where it's coming from.
Further, Commissioner sorry, Commissioner Mushich. Your light was hidden by
Yeah,
your
I'm
name
sorry,
tag.
it's hiding.
No, it's fine.
Thank you, Chair Olson, for letting me speak, since I'm not on this committee. I did want to just let Commissioner Menz know that if you feel that it would behoove the committee to table this item and take it back up at such a time after we've had an opportunity to work on our strategic goals, that's certainly something that would be in order for you to do at this time.
That's a great suggestion for us to move forward. But do you think that this sets the stage for something bigger at the state level, Commissioner Abeni? Is that what I'm hearing that this amendment is? That it's laying the groundwork for prioritizing future consistent long-term funding to address huge issues along water quality?
Yes, and these other issues as well, habitat. It really matters, and it's, to me, square in, our wheelhouse, and I think that if we aren't, I think Commissioner Schaefer said it once really well, it's, I think, up to us to lead on these issues particularly, and not that we don't care about the other issues and don't work on those issues, but this, to me, needs advocacy from an owner of the most valuable natural resources, some of the most valuable natural resources in our state. So.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 8, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, no. No. The amendment passes. Okay, on to amendment number 9. Commissioner Benny, to your amendment.
Last one for me. State fleet and equipment contract. Support state-led initiative for working with manufacturers and suppliers on expediting the conversion of public fleets to fully electric vehicles and maximizing procurement of other non-fossil fuel dependent equipment. Support reasonably early adoption of electric equipment to drive demand and innovation. Be a cold climate leader in electrification. So this is me swagging it a little bit, I have to say, but like any public entity, we use the state contract. The state contract has a huge amount of buying power for vehicles, for other types of equipment. And I have no idea if our state fleet management strategy is to be pushing on these things, but I know that in our cold climate, we seem to be the last ones getting a lot of this technology. So I would like to see it as a priority. I understand if it's a big pivot, but I think that this is putting our money where our mouth is, or at least trying to.
Any discussion on the amendment? Yeah, I would just like to say, yeah, I think obviously adoption of public fleets to electric is critical. I know that the city of Minneapolis, when I was on SEAC, they have a very strong plan to do that, and I'm fairly certain that we do as well. I will say, I think this is just, I kind of feel like I know there is a lot of action at the state level on this already, and I feel that perhaps that we have reached a bit of our carrying capacity for some amendments as related to environment, and that perhaps we should wait to see some of the other ones that we have passed come to fruition before moving on to others. So, I think it's a great amendment, and if we could vote for everything under the sun, I think I would, but I'm going to restrain myself from voting for this just for that logic. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The amendment passes. Okay, we now have Amendment number 10, adaptation and resiliency. Would someone like to move that amendment? Is there?
Those are the last two.
I'm not on the committee.
I will move it. I believe, yep, I will move this one. So adaptation and resiliency, support legislative actions that assist land managers with whatever, that word, funding for work to adapt land use to be resilient to the impacts of changing climate. Examples include tree planting, stormwater management, ecological restoration, erosion control. Okay. Discussion on amendment number 10. Discussion. Okay, President Forney.
Thank you. I actually did not write this because I think it has been, should we say, give the credit to it, actually, Commissioner Musich wrote this. Both Commissioner Musich and I do sit on an ad hoc climate resiliency committee, and in hearing that we were potentially changing up our policy issues, we both wanted to take a stab at what we felt was at the core of what we have been working on. And so I have to say that the amendment number 10 is her rendition, and amendment number 11 is my rendition, is probably the best way to say it. And very much I feel that both of them are at the core of what our values are. I think it's been spoken here in different ways. If all of these need to be included, if we need to, slice and dice, whatever, I'm not sure. But we did want to speak to what we've been working on and what we feel is so relevant to, the park board. As far as amendment number 11, the one thing that I do have to say that I'm not really seeing in the rest of these, and that is that priority given to the environmental justice areas. I think it speaks to a lot of what Vice President Smith has indicated, that, this is a priority, I hope, for this board. So anyway, I'll let them stand, but I just want you to know where they were coming from, and stand for any questions.
Thank you for that, President Forney. Is there any other discussion on this? I would just like to say it is clear that this board wants some sort of overarching climate statement goal as far as the legislature goes. The one that I proposed, 10 and 11, I think all kind of share similar veins. And I would even point to the one that I proposed, President Forney, on environmental justice areas. I did mention focusing on our most vulnerable communities, which is environmentally overburdened, which I think would include that. So I think we want one of these. I'm wondering if it would be best that we either table these or vote them down for now, but then come back after our strategic planning or something else, and we can have a true statement on this that we feel that we can all go behind. That's just kind of my thinking here. Somehow, if we can mesh all the, even most, I would say, Commissioner, Co-Chair Abeni, many of the amendments that we passed of yours fulfill a couple of what these are pushing for. So I guess I'm saying let's maybe not be redundant, and this is something that we want. So I would, I suppose, well, first I would like to see if there's any more discussion on this. Okay, well, I would like to move to table this amendment and amendment number 11 until, I would just like to table it with the goal of us coming up with a comprehensive climate statement for the legislative priorities at some point in the future, looking probably at our strategic planning coming up this week. So that is going to be my motion. Is there any discussion to the motion to table? Yes, Secretary Ringgold.
I just have a point of perhaps clarification from council, because I think only Amendment 10 is moved at the moment.
Okay.
Can we I just don't know if we can table both of them if one of them is active.
You just, excuse me, Mr. Chair, amendment 10 is just before the body. There's been no motion on 11.
So I would edit that to just table Amendment 10. Co-Chair Abeni.
Yeah, and I would say that I think we do need to, we'll take these up one by one. I guess I would like to see us vote on Amendment 10 and then have 11 introduced. And we might not advance all of these given the whole thing. But I also, I think you just said it, Commissioner Olson, this is also really signaling a priority here. So I don't think we should necessarily table them. I think we should just vote on them.
Okay. I'll recant my motion. That's probably not a word. Take back my motion to table. Any further discussion on 10? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Nay. The amendment passes. Okay, so on to Amendment 11. Would anyone like to discuss Amendment number 11?
Do you have to read it?
Oh, sorry. I would like to move. I would like to move amendment number 11, which states, establish permanent sequestration or reduction of carbon through incentivized practices, guaranteeing tree planting to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, add resiliency to the landscape by sequestering carbon, conserving energy, and improving water quality and habitat. Priority must be given to environmental justice areas. Oh, that's not related. Okay, justice areas, period. Discussion on the amendment. Co-Chair Benny.
I just have a quick question about just the sort of the idea behind incentivized practices. Is there like an idea there that could be described to me? Is it something like the tree program or?
First of all, this did come out of some of the discussions in this ad hoc group that we are, is that unfortunately, landlords are not encouraged to keep trees on their property. They look at it as a liability. And so how do you do the reverse? Instead of, penalizing, how do you incentivize? And I just, wanted to mention that I believe that in, I think it's the city, but it might have also been the Hennepin County, that they do use this type of phraseology as well. So it is meant to be something a little bit more measurable. So that's where that's coming from.
Any further discussion? Again, yeah, I kind of same quibbles. I suppose I feel it's a bit redundant, and we have quite a few amendments already going on this, similar topics. So that's, I'll be voting against it, but it is really great, and we should be pushing for it, obviously. Any other discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion passes. The amendment passes. Okay. Now, yep, on to the next one. Commissioner Thompson, to your amendment.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure. All right. Okay, so this is my first stab at writing something, but it's undeniable. It's bookending our meeting, the tragedies of the death of young people, and I don't care what is said about age 18 being an adult. A lot of people that aren't counted as children are children dying. So, toward that end, I have put forth, I'll call it Amendment 12, but when I wrote it, it just says amendment. Youth violence prevention and harm reduction. We recognize that parks are the first and best place for teens and young people to connect with their community. In alignment with the City of Minneapolis and under the guidance of the Youth Violence Prevention Act of 2009, we seek increased state funding, state resources to fund prevention and intervention programs that would address youth violence and associated risk and protective factors. This would A, align us with the city, and B, add to what the city is able to do, specifically in the youth violence protocols, strengthening physical health and education, increasing the number of children who can safely bike and walk to school, and provide early interventions to young homeless children. Additionally, the funding can be used for plan and assess evidence-based and promising practices for juvenile delinquency and criminal street gang activity prevention, especially for at-risk youth, and to the development and early intervention for out-of-school time and mentoring opportunities. Specifically, we can call data that explicitly seeks information on the correlation between robust park engagement and the reduction in crime, violence, / community harm, especially among children and teens. It's very wordy, but I don't think I'm alone as being a parent in the city, or just you don't need to be a parent, a concerned citizen, a teacher, of which I also am, when you, so many moments finding out about young people dying in broad daylight. It could be the dark of night. It's awful either way. And for myself, this last week was just, you just throw your hands up and say, not anymore, I'm so sick of this. And I had this light bulb go off that was like, wait a second, I'm a member of the park board now, so maybe there's something we can do. And I appreciate President Forney sort of guiding language on this. So that's the amendment. It's essentially just seeking money in alignment with the city, so that we can fund some of these things to actually start to get, I know we have the programs in place. It's just a matter of funding it and getting the street outreach teams there and the rec programs and all that kind of stuff. So that's what this is meant to do.
Any discussion on the amendment? President Forney.
Thank you again for allowing me to speak. What Commissioner Thompson is referring to is that, as I indicated, the city, all these different jurisdictions have their own policy issue. And so the policy issue that the city has is youth violence prevention, increasing state resources to fund prevention and intervention programs that address youth violence and associated risk and protective factors. And then they also have funding for Youth Violence Prevention Act of 2009. Mm-hmm. I guess I would ask if what our lobbyists feel is appropriate, succinct, or everything that Commissioner Thompson is speaking to in this amendment is right on. Do we need to be more succinct, or leave the policy issue as presented? Go for it.
Is that a question? That's a question.
That's a question to one of our many lobbyists here.
Yeah, right. And one of the other ones can weigh in on it, Pamela or Tom Workman or Frankie. Violence Prevention Act. Which Youth Violence Prevention Act are you referring to, Commissioner? Is it a state one or a federal?
It's actually a national protocol that I believe that the city was referencing when they were crafting their own.
Okay, all right, so, clearly this board's been engaged on these issues on a number of levels. The superintendent might be able to speak to this. And we do, on the legislative agenda, we are pursuing, I believe, more funding for summer youth employment. That's just one strategy. There's many other strategies that need to be applied to this. It's certainly in alignment with what the board has directed us to do before. It always, I found helpful to, tell, if we're working on it, we're looking for opportunities to be effective on it. Ms. Golkemeyer could maybe address this. That might be a better question, so she can talk about what the strategies are. But yeah, it's certainly in alignment with other things we've done. We've been told by this board to go to the legislature and get funding for youth employment or for other strategies that this board actually does, that the staff is working on. So, I don't know if Pamela wants to address that, or?
Yes, what Brian said is true. The Youth at Work grant program is something that we are pursuing them to increase the pot because they had more applicants this last cycle, and we did get $25,000 less than we had in previous years, and we used that for our employment training programs that are now under asset management. And I think the first sentence, and then we seek increasing state resources to fund prevention intervention programs that address youth violence, associated risk, and protective factors. I mean, that's all fitting. I think it's long to include the entire part here, but of course that's up to the board. I don't know.
I would kind of echo those. I think the first sentence, if it could almost be cleaned up, and especially just and to make it more general policy. I think this is maybe one where it seems like we're working on it, and I know it's tough. I think this could really benefit from succinctity.
Yep.
Because it's. And this is something that I ran into while, working on the climate one. When I first presented it and brought it to staff, I had like a dozen different things that I wanted on there, because when you start to go down there, you're like, okay, this is really all important. And so, I think it's, and especially what's going on. I also wonder if it's asking for funding. So would this go in the financial section? I don't know. This is great. I would like to see maybe some parsed down language before pushing it forward. I see the light from Commissioner Menz.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. I agree that the language, it's too long, just because we have to capture the attention of the legislatures, and they don't have a huge attention span all the time. But the attention span that the legislatures do have, that I have talked with in at least my district, is that they want to fund these types of programs. They have money, and I know that youth employment has been a huge way for us to get money from the state and the legislature, but I'm wondering, youth violence prevention seems like it's a new bucket for us to ask for, and I think it's a really good bucket to ask for right now, because it includes probably kids. I mean, we can put kids to work at parks, but we also want them to play at parks. So it expands the opportunities that we have to prevent youth violence and not only limit it to youth employment. And that's one thing that I think that we should pass this amendment, even if it's in a modified form of, because it's just another bucket for Pamela or other folks to go to the legislature and say, we're ready to receive this bucket. This is a priority for us. And we don't only want to put kids to work, we want to get them playing again, and we want to get them to the park again. And I feel like this is a good opportunity for us to do that.
Okay. Co-Chair Benny.
Yeah, and I would say I echo something similar. And in a sense, I like the additional text there, because you're helping us understand where you're coming from. But now that we know, I wonder if we could just go with that first paragraph, if it could be amended right now. And that's active enough. But what you've done is you've given us a guide path here for exactly how it ties back to this work and this Act of 2009, which I really appreciate that. So if you would be comfortable with amending it that way, that might be a thing to do.
I would be fine with that if I found a way to properly do that through the protocols and channels.
I think it might be not, it's doing grammar and editing while we're in committee is never great, I think. So I think this is maybe where tabling would be warranted, and then we can, when it's before the full board, I think it would be certainly a worthwhile, I think, folks would be for it. So that's my suggestion. I see Secretary Ringgold is lit up as well.
Thank you, Co-Chair Olson, and I might defer to Council Rice on this. I think if you table it, then you have to untable it and bring it back. So it might be easier to either withdraw, or you could do a friendly amendment, but then you could bring it back as a new amendment at the, for the full board. If you withdraw, you could bring it back as a new amendment, is what I meant to say.
Commissioner Menz, or was Commissioner Alper up first? I'm not sure.
Sure. I just have a really small point. I can't find the Youth Violence Prevention Act of 2000. Oh, so maybe we should. After the fact, would you like the copy?
No, she's talking about the act that
Oh,
is
sorry.
it mentioned. Yeah, and so that,
I found the act, and I kind of remember this was something Representative Clark worked on back in about 12 years ago. And it actually does follow some programs that we have. She funded a program in St. Paul and Minneapolis and 3 outstate programs. And I guess we'd have to track down who actually got the money and where they were. So that's something we can research and bring back to the board. As to Secretary Ringgold, if the board wants to advance it to the full board agenda, you could, if it needs some more work, you could offer an amendment there. Or you could defeat it in committee and then bring an amendment too. It's up to the committee. Either one would work.
it's your amendment, Commissioner Thompson. Would you like to?
So, just to be clear,
Yeah.
I can withdraw it
Yes.
and bring it back at the full board.
Right.
No?
Yep. You could offer.
Or I could have us just vote on it now and then switch it out or figure out the language later.
You could offer an amendment at the full board if we vote it down. That is similar, but.
I think we
edited.
should just vote now and see what happens.
Or either way, it doesn't really matter. Actually. Yeah.
I'm going to keep my motion.
Okay. I see Commissioner Menz.
Yeah, I would agree that, oh, there we go. I would agree that we should vote on it now, whether or not we amend the language now or later, but hoping that Commissioner Thompson will go back and take the suggestions of this committee and modify the language to support a more concise language that bring to the full board. But I'll be supporting it.
I would welcome the help of the committee in crafting that language. Thank you.
All right. Well, we're all having fun. All right. So I think we've discussed this fully. So all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The amendment passes. All right. I now adjourn the Legislative and Intergovernmental Committee.
Sorry, you have to vote on the main motion.
Oh, yep, sorry, I do not adjourn. I take that back. Okay, now all those in favor of the overriding motion, overarching motion, whichever, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It passes. I now adjourn.
Oh, I just have a question.
Oh, yes.
So
to you,
as far as
President
the policy issues that were submitted whenever, those are being completely removed? I just want to make sure that we're, okay. All of those
No,
are going forward.
some of them will be, yeah, so that's, so folks are aware that divestment and the pedestrian and bike stuff, that will be there. So. Okay, and I now adjourn it. Okay. Sorry.
Okay, so is this us now? The time being.
Could I
Oh, no?
raise a point of information prior to moving into your committee?
Please.
Lovely, thank you. Secretary Ringgold, to aid everyone on the board in understanding what might need to be amended going forward, and since it's a little bit tough to find things in our agenda software, would it be possible for you to email a copy of what the newest version of the legislative agenda priorities are to everyone on the board, so that we have a fresh document to work from for amendments before the full board?
Absolutely.
Awesome, thank you.
Now, the time being 8:13 in the PM, I am calling to order the Administration and Finance Committee. Secretary Ringgold, can you please call the roll?
Vice President Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Mentz.
Here, but I'm going to go to the bathroom.
Co-Chair Schaefer.
Here.
Co-Chair Thompson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you.
Have one.
Let's see here. Let's make sure I do this right this time. So, can someone please move the agenda as we have it here?
So move.
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Fantastic. The agenda is so moved and passed. Can someone please move the minutes from the meeting of Wednesday, January 19th?
So moved.
Oh.
Excellent. Is all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I should say, yeah, we've got 4 ayes and 1 gone to the bathroom, so that passes. We're good. So, our action item for tonight, would someone like to move our item that is before us?
Sure, I can move it.
Yes,
It's
please.
Resolution 2022-120. Resolution approving a memorandum of understanding between the Minneapolis Park and Rec Board and the City of Minneapolis Division of Water Treatment and Distribution Services for the provision of combination drinking fountain bottle fillers at Minneapolis rec centers and other park facilities.
Fantastic. Is there any discussion on this matter? And I see no lights. I don't know if Commissioner Menz is going to be sad that he would miss this, but I would like to say, is everyone in favor of Resolution 2022-120?
Hey, Co-Chair
Oh.
Thompson.
Yes.
There's a gentleman in the back kind of wailing. Is that a
No, you-
a code signal for something?
We're good? Thank you, I appreciate. Thank you for that. If there's nothing else.
Here comes.
Oh, here it comes, perfect, just in time for the vote. So all those in favor of Resolution 2022-120, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstention? Excellent. The resolution passes.
In your speed up.
I don't believe is there anything else there's no study report item? We're good. Do I have to, President Forney, do you need to call the adjournment? This is, the Committee of Administration and Finance is adjourned.
Great.